Chapter 682. Get on my back, we're leaving, he voiced out to the girl. She shrank back as she saw Gustav's eyes glowing blue color and his right arm thrice the size of his normal arm with bluish veins. Don't worry, do as he says, Boss Danzo comforted her. One moment, Gustav said and moved towards the three men by the sides who were shrinking back to the wall. It was you right, Gustav voiced out as he pointed at the man wearing a blue turban on his head. The man shrank back in fear, wondering what Gustav was talking about, till his back kissed the wall. Gustav conjured up an atomic blade in his left hand and threw it forward without wasting any more time. Shrieve plop. The sound of tissue being cut through echoed in the room as the blade pierced into his forehead. Blood flowed down his face as his eyes rolled to the back and he was sent to the afterlife. The others shivered with looks of fright, sincerely scared for their life as they stared at Gustav. However, Gustav knew there was no time to waste, so he quickly picked Boss Danzo up as the girl jumped onto his back. Sprint has been activated. He bolted out of the room with speed, leaving behind a blast of wind that blew across the room. Garu, Biden, catch the escapers. In a part of the facility above the room area of the spectators, a man voiced out as he stood in front of two people. One was a buff man with ram horns and blade-like fins on the sides of his arms. The other was a slim-looking guy with blue worm-like hair and a black, dotted white skin. The wormy hair glowed and began wriggling as it rose. I can see him. He's fast, Biden voiced out as his worm-like hair continuously wriggled. Let's get him before he leaves, Garu voiced out as turned around to head towards the exit. His massive body bulged intensely, causing his clothes to squeeze tightly to his body, displaying the immensely muscular frame. Just to be clear, we can use any means at our disposal to catch them? Biden asked as he slowly walked to catch up with Garu. Yes, just make sure you catch them. The person helping them is another matter. It is of no consequence if you kill that one, the man in the background voiced out. A grin appeared on Garu's face after hearing that as they moved. Let's go. Biden grabbed hold of him before pulling him into the shadows. Both of them disappeared into the shadow completely. Whoosh, Gustav blasted across the place with speed, heading towards the exit point. Several guards already arrived to block him, but with his speed, he was able to dodge every single attack and even ran across the wall to dodge some of them. He could already see the entry area in the distance, which was structured to look like the opened mouth of a beast. More guards were stationed there, and Gustav could see the mouth closing up. They were trying to trap them here. Speeding up and jumping across the walls in a zigzag format, Gustav was able to avoid most of the guards. Zwii, zwii, zwii. Boom, boom. Sounds of blasts rang out as Gustav spun across the air while leaping to another part of the wall. He rebounded off that wall speedily as several attacks came flying towards him and headed straight for one of the guards on the ground. Bam! His knee slammed into the guard's face, sending him flying with blood spilling out of his nose, eyes, and mouth. The guards by the side saw this as an opportunity to attack and both threw out powered attacks. One a spinning force of white energy and the other several icicles flying towards him. Gustav swerved towards the side, first dodging one as he threw out his leg in response, hitting one of the guards in the chest. He jumped backward to dodge the icicle before dashing forward once again and grabbing hold of the second guard with his left arm. Bang! He slammed him into the wall and spun around to throw him towards the guards approaching from behind. Gustav was holding onto Boss Danzo with his right hand like he was a baby while Carice's was on his back, holding onto him tightly hoping she wouldn't get thrown off. Both of them did not wish to be dead weight, but they had no choice but to just get strung along with the way Gustav was moving with so much speed and agility. All this was done with very quick speed, but even with that, the mouth of the opening up ahead was only a few feet away from closing up. Combination has been activated. Sprint plus dash. Bolting forward with immense speed, Gustav sped through the small opening left in the entry point, just before it closed up. After his body sped through, a loud sound of collision was heard behind. Bam! The mouth had closed up, trapping the other guards behind that were chasing after him. The entry point area was clear of guards, but Gustav knew that the controls still lay in their hands since they only needed to push a button to have it opened up again. They were still underground, and this was a structured space with walls, so Gustav dashed towards the side after deactivating combination. His right arm, which was still glowing and bulging with blue energy, arched back as he arrived in front of the wall by the side. Hiya! Gustav voiced out as he gathered the force of all the energy he had absorbed from the glass earlier into his fist. Right before Boss Danzos and Carice's eyes, they saw the blue on his arms move towards his fist area. Gustav threw his fist forward with force. Boom! It sounded like an explosion went off as his fist slammed into the wall, and a blue blast of energy burst forth. Chapter 683. The entire tunnelway began trembling violently as they blasted a massive crater into the area where Gustav punched, which, in turn, created cracks that spread across the entire place. Gustav quickly turned around at that point and dashed forward, away from that area along with both of them. KRRYHH bam, bam, bam. All across the vicinity parts of the wall structure within the tunnelway way fell crazily, and in a matter of moments, these chunks of rocks had blocked completely the entry area behind. The rocks are still up ahead, covering more parts and making the obstruction even thicker. Gustav felt bad about Sir Zil and Damien, in particular, being trapped there, but he had no choice. It would take a lot of time before they could get the obstructing rocks out of the way, which would give Gustav the chance to escape with Boss Danzo and Carices. Gustav sped past the affected area, which was over 200 feet of space, similar to a football pitch range. This was how much the tunnelway was affected by his punch, and even the burning sands began to leak from above after the underground structure in this area was badly affected. Fortunately, it was well structured, so, besides the area Gustav aimed for, the other parts would not cave in. The spectators and everyone on the other side were still very much okay. Friarius, while Gustav was speeding away with both of them, two figures phased out of the shadows in front of the affected area of piles of rocks. These two were the same people to who the man within the facility was talking earlier, Biden and Garu. This gives me a lot to work with, Biden voiced out as his worm-like hair wriggled mildly. There was an intersection right in front of the affected area which led to 3 different paths. He turned towards the one on the far left. This way, Garu, he voiced out while moving forward. Garu caught up to him as they moved in that direction. He proceeded to touch Garu's shoulder, and the instant he did that, they phased into the shadows again. Dash, what is going on? Dash, did those two truly just escape? Dash, this is unbelievable. The voices of the spectators could be heard from all over as the trembling of the facility caused panic to spread. They had heard the sounds of multiple explosions before this, which were sounds of Gustav battling with the guards. There were actually a lot of guards in this facility, but Gustav was very fast, so he was able to avoid most of them before they arrived at his location. Now that he had left and blocked the exit, many of them were trying to get through, but it was proving impossible. The spectators had gathered close to the entry area, questioning the officials and trying to get through. Tell us what is going on, one of them voiced out again. Please remain calm. The situation is under control. We shall proceed with the next match now. One of the staff was trying to regulate the situation. However, the spectators did not seem to want to listen as they remained in their position. Damien walked through the crowd of spectators looking for his grandfather. He later spotted him somewhere by the side speaking with a staff member. Grandfather, he called out to him as he squeezed out of the crowd. All right then, it seems we have no choice, Sir Zil said to the staff before turning around to face Damien. The staff member turned to leave after their brief discussion as well. Grandfather, what is going on? Damien asked. It would seem we are trapped here for the time being, Sir Zil said with a look of suspicion. Trapped? Damien voiced out with a tone of surprise. The battles ongoing earlier caused a part of the tunnelway in front of the exit to collapse. It will take some time for them to get it out of the way, Sir Zil explained. So they truly managed to escape then, Damien said with a tone of realization. Sir Zil's eyes squinted as he mumbled. Also, one of the spectators, Malali, was murdered, Sir Zil added. Damien already heard about this and even saw the corpse being moved a while earlier. No one could link the escape with this murder, which made things more confusing. Grandfather, you know I can get out of here if I use my bloodline abilities, Damien stated with a proposing tone. No, don't even think about it. We don't even know what we're dealing with yet, and what do you intend to do the moment you get out of here? Sir Zil said with a strong tone of disapproval. I couldn't find Big Brother Gustav even when I checked everywhere. I'm sure this has something to do with him, Damien stated. We can't be so sure. You could have missed him or something, and keep your voice down. If this truly has something to do with him, we don't want anyone knowing, Sir Zil voiced out with a logical tone. Sir Zil also shared similar thoughts with Damien, seeing as Gustav had completely disappeared and only came here because of El Dorado in the first place. It didn't seem like a coincidence. The looks of the person responsible for the incident were displayed to all the guards who arrived late, and he caught a glimpse. This person had white hair and an oblong-shaped face. He had no idea that Gustav had a shape-shifting ability, so he was having a hard time connecting him to the incident. Within a brightly lit tunnelway, whooshing sounds reverberated across the place as a red streak blazed through with speed. Wind spread across the place as Gustav ran through the tunnelway. His perception was spread far and wide across the place, so he knew he only had to run for about 1 minute more before he arrived at the part of the tunnelway where the portal back to the city would be generated. Gustav suddenly sensed something and turned his head to the side. Chapter 684. Gustav suddenly sensed something and turned his head to the side. A figure suddenly phased out of the rectangular-shaped shadow by the left of a small pole hanging from the ceiling area of the tunnelway way. The instant Gustav spotted the figure, he sensed a strong force headed for him. He instantly leaped into the air and did a backflip. A sharp-looking crescent-shaped dark blade passed right underneath his ascending body. It was so massive, it reached both sides of the walls of the tunnelway, cutting long lines across them. Bam! Gustav landed on the ground and turned around with speed, only to see that the figure had disappeared. What was that? Carices voiced out with a tone of confusion. Gustav's eyes squinted as he looked around him, trying to find the culprit. Even though he could see anyone in the vicinity, he could still sense a dark presence. God Eyes has been activated. Just as he activated God Eyes, a figure phased out of his shadow, striking towards his neck instantly. Gustav's eyes widened as he quickly bent his neck towards the side, causing the dark-looking strike to tear open the left side of his neck. Blood spilled out from his neck as he dashed towards the side and struck out, only for the figure to disappear again. My boy, are you okay? You're bleeding. Boss Danzo and Carices voiced out at the same time as blood oozed down Gustav's neck. I'm fine, Gustav said with a calm tone, ignoring the injury. You are truly fast, but I thought we would be dealing with a stronger opponent. A masculine voice echoed across the tunnelway. It was impossible to pinpoint the location of the owner of this voice, since it seemed like it was coming from every direction. Just as this thought appeared in Gustav's head, a figure shot out from a shadow on the wall towards Gustav. Gustav jumped backward quickly again to avoid the fist thrown out at him. Boom! The fist collided with the ground, causing a loud blast to ring out as cracks appeared all over and shockwaves were sent forth across the place, forcing Gustav further backward. As the dust cleared up, Gustav could see a massive 9-foot-tall man with ram horns and an immense muscular build. He had metallic fin-like outlines protruding out the sides of his arms. Rip! His muscles bulged, even more, ripping his upper clothes as he began walking towards Gustav. This was one of the two told to get Boss Danzo and the girl back, Garu. Must be one of the guards. A kilo ranked? Gustav was instantly able to sense his strength was similar to that of Miss Amy when sealed. It was similar, but he could tell this one was weaker. However, even with that, a weak kilo ranked would still defeat 5 falcon ranked mixed bloods any day and any time. The situation seems dire. There must be another one since the voice said Gustav thought. Figuring all this out, the next step that came to mind was run. Sprint has been activated. Whoosh! He instantly sped forward, running across the left wall to dodge Garu. Garu's eyes turned to the side, following Gustav's speed, and he proceeded to jump towards the wall by the side while Gustav was running across it. He swung out his arm, making use of the metallic fins to slash at Gustav's figure. Gustav was able to dodge as he leaped forward, escaping the slash by a few inches. Bam! The entire place quaked again as the fin created a 17 feet deep gash across the walls along with cracks spreading. Gustav continued speeding forward after landing back on the ground, as Geru turned around to chase after him. Bam! Bam! Bomb! It sounded like giants were running across the tunnelway way as Geru chased after Gustav, slashing repeatedly at him from behind. Fwoosh! Swerve! Fwoosh! Swerve! Gustav would occasionally swerve from side to side and even jump at times to dodge the slash, which sent sharp shockwaves towards him. Sounds of collision would occasionally reverberate across the place as the entire tunnelway way shook violently from his attacks. Gustav was only a little faster than Geru was while using sprint. Geru also didn't have to make contact to attack from behind. He only had to swing his arms, which showed just how powerful a kilo-ranked mixed blood was. Gustav already knew that he would lose badly if he was to face a kilo-ranked mixed blood with his current strength level. He would at most be able to hold out for some time, but he knew defeat would be at hand, so he chose to escape this time. He still had 2 people in his grasp, so escaping was the main focus right now. He was already starting to leave a big gap between him and Geru, so he knew it was only a matter of time before he became completely out of sight. Geru was unable to touch him with any of those attacks, even though they caused chunks of rocks to fall from the ceiling at times. He was able to successfully maneuver his way around them and avoid getting hit so far. Emergency quest. Successfully escape from guards, Geru and Biden. A notification suddenly appeared in his line of sight. So they truly are 2 of them. This confirmed things for Gustav, seeing the notification. Then, where's the second one? The instant this thought came to mind, Gustav sensed a presence around him again and swerved to the side. Just like before, he was a tad too slow, causing the strike aimed at the back of his neck to slash the right side of his neck, causing blood to ooze down. The figure had disappeared right after landing the attack before Gustav could retaliate. Gustav already knew earlier that this person was making use of the shadows, but even with that information, they were just too fast to be dealt with. Chapter 685. This slowed Gustav down once again, causing Geru to catch up. Fwyi! Gustav leaped upwards to dodge another slash which landed by the side and blasted chunks of the ground into the air. Boom! Gustav was thrown forward by the shockwaves from the attack and made use of that to keep running once again. I can't use my flames. It would affect both of them. This was Gustav's only counter to stop his shadow from getting used, but he couldn't use it. The only other option is making use of the dimensional bracelet, which I'm not sure would work underground, and there's 3 of us this time, he thought. Gustav just knew he had to try regardless of how things were. He wouldn't want to get out of here and still be chased down by these 2. It would be quite problematic. He placed Boss Danzo on his right shoulder and began operating his dimensional bracelet as he kept running forward. All of a sudden, he sensed the figure again, and due to dealing with trying to pick a teleportation coordinate, he was a little slower to react than the last time. Poochie, a dark strike aimed at his lower back, pierced into his left side, sending Gustav flying forward. As both Boss Danzo and Carices were flung away from his grasp due to the force of the attack, he slammed into the wall bang. A loud blast echoed as his figure created a small hole in the wall. Blood leaked out his sides and down the wall as he struggled to pull himself out while gritting his teeth. SSHHHSHSHHSS. He held onto his left side, which was making sizzling sounds with dark fumes coming out as well as blood. Toxin immunity has been activated. Clearing toxins. Toxin has been deemed too strong. Toxin immunity has been overridden. The notifications appeared in Gustav's line of sight and disappeared in a few moments. As expected of a kilo rank. The toxin is more powerful than my current level of toxin immunity, Gustav said internally as he pulled himself out of the hole. You did a good job of holding on for this long, but it ends now. The same voice as before echoed across the place. Geru figure could be seen up ahead, charging forward with speed. Gustav quickly ran towards Boss Danzo and Carices, who were stabilizing themselves after the fall. They both had bruises, but were overall still okay. Take this. The portal will open up for you both. Gustav passed a red card to both of them which displayed a small glow at the middle. The portal is close by. Run and keep running. Don't look back, Gustav said to Boss Danzo and Carices. But what about you? Boss Danzo asked with a worried expression. I'll hold them back. Just go, Gustav voiced out with a strong tone. He could still see the hesitation in their eyes, so he quickly voiced out again. You two will only hold me back and get us all killed if you don't move now. Trust me. Both of them decided to do as told at this point and began running forward while Gustav turned around to face the opponents, headed for him from up ahead. Partial collapsal form activated. Gustav's body bloated as he turned green, and he proceeded to stomp on the ground. Grrrkrick, a wall began forming behind him after Boss Danzo and Carissa's got a few feet away. Icicle-like rocks shot out of the ground at a quick pace, joining together and spreading out from wall to wall across the 70 feet wide tunnelway. At this point, Garu arrived right in front of Gustav, while slashing out before he was done completing the wall. Gustav remained in position as an icicle-shaped rock shot out of the ground in front of him. Bang! A violent collision rang out as the metallic blade-like fins slammed into the icicle-shaped rock, causing blasts of winds to spread across the place. Cracks appeared on the rock that protected Gustav from the attack, but this 1 second of obstruction was enough for Gustav to finish constructing a sturdy wall behind him. Gustav rolled to the side as his body transformed back to normal, while the rock that protected him blasted into pieces with Garu blade-like fins slashing forward. Add 10 attribute points to strength, Gustav said internally, as his body increased in size. Plus 10 attribute points added to strength. His arms turned brownish-red and thorns protruded from several parts of his body, along with 2 bull-like horns. Oh, so you have the ability of transformation? Garu voiced out with a fascinated tone. Just as dashed forward, Gustav sensed the dark force around him again. Without being told, he already knew what this meant. Fiery core bloodline activated. Vrua bluish flames instantly burst forth from his figure, spreading across the entire vicinity. Garu jumped backward as the flames consumed everywhere around Gustav, spreading across more than 700 feet radius. As the vicinity lit up, the dark force Gustav sensed disappeared. A figure phased out of Garu's massive shadow and moved to his side, staring at the glaring flames. This person had a slim figure with bluish worm-like hair that kept wriggling in the air. It would seem this person has more than a single bloodline, Biden voiced out as he stood side by side with Garu. Flames like this are of no consequence to my toughness, Garu voiced out with a deep masculine tone. I shall refrain for now. My dark travel will not work unless the flames are put out, Biden voiced out in response. I will deal with him on my own, Biden said before dashing forward and swinging out both his arms in an X format. FWW woohoos, a big part of the flames was instantly cleared up, revealing Gustav within the sea of flames. He seemed to be prepared for this already as he shot out an elongated and massive fist towards Biden. Biden reacted by swinging his arm forward as well to meet Gustav's attack. Boom! Massive shockwaves instantly spread across the place as the tunnelway violently trembled once again. Chapter 686. Boom! Massive shockwaves instantly spread across the place as the tunnelway violently trembled once again. Gustav found himself being pushed back as the force happened to be as powerful as he expected. He flipped backward twice in the air and landed on the wall he created behind. Thump! He jumped forward still blazing with fire, dodging a slash attack that came an instant after the collision from Garu. Garu was barely moved by the clash between them earlier. The slash he sent out in the next instant slammed into the wall Gustav created, causing a mild trembling, but it didn't come crashing down. Garu was surprised seeing how sturdy the wall was, withstanding his attack without taking any damage, but at the moment he was focused on dealing with Gustav. He felt it was insulting that a Falcon ranked had lasted this long against both of them. Chasing after Gustav's frame within the blazing blue flames, Garu slashed, repeatedly clearing a lot of flames from the area. However, it only took a moment for the flames to spread across the place again, covering everywhere. Gustav conjured a 5 feet long atomic blade in his right hand, making it wider and longer than normal. Fly, he swerved across the place, dodging Garu's repeated attacks, knowing he wouldn't be able to tank them due to the explosiveness of the force on each collision. Dashing forward and sliding downwards, Gustav dodged another attack from him and swung the atomic blade towards his right knee area. Slash. A shallow mark was left on the surface of his kneecap, allowing just one drop of blood to roll down. Geru turned right around with speed and swung out again. Gustav was able to dodge by a few inches, but the fist landed on the ground, which caused another shockwave to spread out, sending him flying once again. Bang! His back slammed into the side of the wall as his blazing body burnt partly through it. Black blood flowed out of his left abdominal side, which was cut open earlier. Am I going to regenerate completely anytime soon? Gustav questioned internally as he noticed that the state of the previous injury from Biden's dark attack was still the same. Your regeneration is already active but slow due to the toxin in the previous attack, the system responded. The more you strain yourself, the harder it will get to regenerate, it added. Well, I don't have much of a choice now, do I? Gustav screamed inwardly as he quickly jumped out of the hole. Boom! The sound of a collision rang out as Geru's fist slammed straight into the hole where Gustav found himself earlier. Leaping away after missing, he chased Gustav around again while Biden watched from the background, staying a safe distance away from the igniting flames. A dark spike protruded from his palm area as he watched. If the opportunity presents itself, I will end this mixed blood myself, he said inwardly with a dissatisfied look. The longer they stayed here, the higher the chances of Boss Danzo and Carice's getting away. It worked, Carice's voiced out as the purplish portal opened up in front of them. The card Gustav passed to them was glowing with bright blood-colored light. Carice's stepped forward while Boss Danzo turned around to face the direction where the sounds of blasts were coming from. He stood with a worried expression for a bit. Let's go, Carice's shouted out to him while pulling his hand. Stay safe, my boy, Boss Danzo voiced out as he followed Carice's into the portal. Zing! They disappeared into it a moment later, and it closed up. They found themselves in a small wasteland in the next instant. Boss Danzo looked up ahead and could see the road that led back to the city, as well as the tall and luxurious-looking buildings in the distance. We're back in Burning Sand City, Boss Danzo voiced out. This way? Let's go, he added while pulling Carice's with him, while pushing his hat further downwards to hide his face. It was currently around 9:30 p.m. in the night, but the skies were still bright since Burning Sand City never experienced nightfall. Even though it looked like daytime, people still had to sleep so the streets and road wouldn't be as active as actual mornings and afternoons. Lots of people were in their homes sleeping by now, but there would still be movement in some areas. Boss Danzo and Carice's ran towards the roadside that led out of this deserted area and began heading for the closest public road so they could get a ride. Faviola Relaxation Palace. Kids got taste. Even though the situation was worrisome, Boss Danzo couldn't help but compliment Gustav for picking one of the best places to stay in the city. Gustav had thought out lots of possible scenarios and told Boss Danzo that if they ever got separated, this was the place to meet up. Boss Danzo couldn't just help but admire Gustav's smartness. Using the room he was staying within as a means of escape was brilliant since it was closer to the exit. If they had made a run for it when he met up with him earlier, the possibility of them getting trapped in there was close to 100%. He also seemed to have thought this out and told him where to head to if they ever got separated. Now he only hoped Gustav was smart enough to escape the two powerful mixed bloods pursuing. Bang! Bang! Boom! The sounds of collision occasionally rang out, causing the tunnelway to weaken more and more due to the powerful attacks from Geru and Gustav. Scree-Eve! A sonic wave blasted out from with a cloud of dust and flames, blasting Geru backward as his back slammed into a part of the wall again. He gritted his teeth as his arms were raised and crossed out in front of himself to block the attack. Combination has been activated. Dash plus sprint. Whoosh. Speeding forward, Gustav arrived instantly before Geru, while slashing out with his atomic blade. Hundreds of milky-colored blade-like energy appeared in front of him, slamming into different parts of his body repeatedly. Chapter 687. Slash. 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 Geru's arms were still crossed in an X format, as he was unable to follow Gustav's frame due to his immense speed at the moment. Cuts appeared all across his body as Gustav continuously slashed out with immense speed, making it look like hundreds of atomic blades were descending upon Geru every second. Even though Garu was not heavily damaged by the multiple attacks landing on him, he knew if this continued, Gustav might eventually find a way to land a very damaging attack on him. Hiya! While screaming out, he swung his fist, trying to catch Gustav, but Gustav was just too fast at the moment. Garu was not even as fast as he was when using sprint. Making use of combination made Garu look even slower to him. He repeatedly dodged the attack and kept striking out, but he knew none of his slashes were causing any damage beyond flesh wounds. Garu's body was a lot tougher than Gustav's. Atomic disintegration was having a hard time cutting through, even though he repeatedly sliced Garu with it. By now, he would have killed lots of mixed bloods with these attacks, but he couldn't even cause high damage for a mixed blood on the kilo level. How can someone be so thick-skinned? Gustav thought as he continuously kept at this while still oozing with flames that burnt across a radius of more than 700 feet. Garu was within the flames, but it practically had no effect on him except for minor stings on the areas where Gustav already managed to make him bleed. Garu, it would seem that you're in a bit of a pinch here. How could you let a mere falcon ranked make a fool out of you? Biden's loud voice echoed across the vicinity again. Garu's face twitched with anger as he heard that. He had repeatedly tried hitting Gustav, but it was to no avail. Gustav knew he couldn't keep this up, since combination consumed a lot of energy points. He was only doing this to stall them so Boss Danzo and Carissa's could get further away. Enough! Garu screamed out as he slammed both his fists together. Bang! Shockwaves instantly spread out, slamming into Gustav and sending him flying. Blurg! He spat out black blood as he felt his insides turn before slamming into the wall on the other side. At this point, combination was deactivated, returning him to his normal speed as the atomic blade also disappeared from his hand. Garu had cuts all over his body as he breathed in and out profusely, with small droplets of blood leaking out of the cuts. How dare you! He shouted out and blasted forward with speed. Bang! His fist slammed into Gustav's gut before he could move out of the wall, burying him further within the hole created after the collision. Gustav spat out more blood as his vision turned a bit blurry. The force from the punch was higher than anything he had taken so far. Even though his body had become extremely tough over time, it was unable to withstand this amount of force. Gustav gritted his teeth as he bore the numbing pain and crossed his arms before the next attack arrived. A diamond-like hardening covered his arms as Garu's fist once again descended upon him, sending him further into the wall. He heard the sounds of his shoulder blades creaking after that hit, and before he could realize what was happening, another one was headed for him again. Bang! His arms spread apart as the fist slammed into them, hitting him straight in the face. Gustav's entire vision turned whitish as he heard a strange, buzzing sound in his ears. What's? Hey, snap out of it. The system's voice brought him back to consciousness as he opened his eyes to see his face covered up. His body was being moved. Garu's entire palm was covering his face, and he had pulled Gustav's bleeding body out of the hole. Your regeneration has gotten rid of the toxin. You should begin healing up faster now, the system announced in his head. Gustav realized that the reason he had passed out was due to his regeneration not working as fast. Although he wouldn't heal instantly, it would prevent the injuries from the attack from wearing him out. Gustav felt a cool force where he could sense his injuries and began gaining energy again. Garu was about to end him at this point with his legs dangling and Garu's left arm arched backward. The flames had been put out completely at this point, but Biden didn't feel the need to do anything anymore. Instead, he began walking towards the wall Gustav created, ready to phase past it with his shadow travel ability. They should have gotten far away by now. It's time, Gustav thought internally. Just as Garu threw his fist forward, bluish flames instantly blasted forth from Gustav's frame as he raised his lower body with speed and wrapped both his legs around Garu's neck. As the flames spread across the place, Gustav recalled his training with Miss Amy and smiled. Still recall how to use an opponent's strength against them. He spun around with intensity and speed while his legs were wrapped around Garu's neck in a deathlock. Bang! Garu only saw his vision spinning before his head slammed into the ground below, creating a small pit. Biden, who was up ahead, got raised by the flames and sped backward to distance himself from them. This little Does he know that flames are my weakness? Biden voiced internally as he tried putting out the flames on his body. Gustav had managed to release himself from Garu's grip at this point. Even though his attack only caused little damage for Garu, he had managed to trap him in the ground for a few moments. Garu's ram horns had pierced deep into the ground, hooking him there for a bit while Biden couldn't get closer at this time. Troyan, spatial gateway activating in 3, 2, 1. Gustav had instantly made use of his dimensional bracelet when he landed back on the ground and set the coordinates to his room within the hotel. Chapter 688. Gustav had instantly made use of his dimensional bracelet when he landed back on the ground and set the coordinates to his room within the hotel. Just as Garu managed to pull his head out of the ground and Biden decided to make use of a special shadow attack, a bright blue light surrounded Gustav. Zing! In the next moment, he disappeared into thin air along with the flash of bright blue light. Garu and Biden stood in place with a look of surprise on their faces. The dark spikes initially protruding out of different parts of Biden's body retracted. Garu still had blood all over his body as well. They both couldn't believe that a falcon-ranked mixed blood managed to get away from them. The bluish flames in the surroundings retreated into a corner and eventually got snuffed out. Garu and Biden turned around to face the wall Gustav created to tear it down, written all over their faces. As they took a step forward, a dark purplish orb with reddish snake-like sparks swimming around it suddenly appeared in their front. It was radiating with so much energy, the whole place began to slowly tremble. What is this? Both of them voiced out just before. Boom! A massive purplish and red wave of destruction instantly blasted forth across the place. The walls and ceiling areas of the tunnelway shattered like glass, all falling apart as the blast continuously spread across the place. Up above the surface of the tunnelway area, it could be seen that the burning sands were sinking into a hole that kept increasing in size. The hole spread from a radius of 100 feet to over 5,000 feet in a matter of seconds. The phenomenon was a crazy one that even when it was quite distant from Burning Sand City, the outline of the massive sinkhole could still be seen from the tallest buildings close to the edge of the west area. Within the underground battle facility, the place quaked forcefully, causing intense panic within. The ceiling cracked along with the walls. For a few, it looked like the walls wouldn't be able to hold. What is going on? This was the question on everyone's lips. The higher-ups within the facility were worried about this as well, since the blast from the orb explosion had reached their ears too. They felt only the guards which they sent out could be responsible for such an occurrence, but it made them worry that whoever was involved in the escape was a powerful entity as well. After a few, the vibration stopped, but what they didn't know now was, all the tunnelway that led out of here had collapsed due to the explosion and the burning sands and caved in, occupying the space within. The higher-ups were later involved in the situation, and they finally disrupted the communication within the underground battle facility, telling the online viewers that a speech would be issued out on a later date. Ending the event for the night, their next step was appeasing the hearts of the spectators who were the rich and powerful within the city. They also had to improvise to get the spectator out of here since the tunnelways had been destroyed. Even if the two trying to escape were caught, they wouldn't be able to make up for the losses that had been incurred today. The emergency exit was activated to get the spectators out of there. Sir Zil and Damien were among the first to get out of the facility back to the city. Their hovercar had been destroyed since it was parked along with many orders outside the entrance to the facility. This was no issue for them since they were very rich. Sir Zil had called on another of his drivers to come to pick them up, and they took a ride back to their home within the city. Try contacting Big Brother Gustav, Damien voiced out within the hovercar. I have tried several times, but the call isn't connecting, Sir Zil answered. I hope he's okay, Damien stated with a sigh. Hopefully. First thing tomorrow, we'll try contacting him again, and if it doesn't go through, I'll send some subordinates to check his place within Fabiola Relaxation Palace, Sir Zil said while placing his hand on Damien's shoulder to comfort him. He was also worried, but the situation had blown beyond proportion, and there was no doubt that the Ring Lords would do everything in their power to find Boss Danzo and Carices. He just hoped that if Gustav was truly involved, he would be smart enough to handle the situation in a way that wouldn't lead to anyone's death. Has anyone heard from Garu and Biden yet? Within the underground battle facility, A loud tone was heard within a group of guards. "No, sir," one of the guards responded. "You are all useless. Not even one of you could catch the perpetrator," the lady in red hat voiced out as she arrived within their midst from down the hallway. They all bowed their heads in respect as she walked in. "Ma'am, I believe the blast was caused by Garu and Biden. They asked to use any means at their discretion, and I gave the go-ahead," the person who spoke earlier voiced out. This was the same person who met up with Garu and Biden earlier to give them the assignment. That would mean the perpetrator was very powerful, the lady voiced out with a tone of suspiciousness. "Where are T?" Just as she was about to voice out again, two figures phased out of the shadows at the entry point. Plop. Both figures fell to the ground, looking extremely battered. The group of guards in the vicinity moved towards them with caution. "Garu? Biden?" one of them voiced out as he arrived in front of the figures. Everyone's eyes widened as they saw the state of the two most powerful guards in their midst. The left half of Garu's face had been blasted apart along with his left horn. Chapter 689. His right horn was broken in half and completely charred black. His entire body was soaked in blood, and the whole of his left leg was missing. Biden, on the other hand, only had his torso left. The other half of his body was gone, and he also had injuries all over. However, both of them were still very much alive. The both of them were quickly taken away for medical treatment. Who put them in such a state? This was the question in everyone's minds, as they realized that the blast earlier must have been from the opponent and not the both of them. The lady was a little stunned, but this situation just made her face turn harder as she began to make plans in her head about how the culprit was going to be caught. "We the three ring lords will not take this lightly," she voiced out before turning around to leave. Fabiola relaxation palace within Gustav's room. He sat on a sofa with Boss Danzo putting some band-aids on his abdomen area, his chest and neck. "There's no need for this. My regeneration will kick in again once my energy points are restored," Gustav voiced out. "No, it is important to keep the injuries disinfected," Boss Danzo responded. "When your body finishes regenerating, you can take them off," he added with a smile. Gustav nearly face-palmed. He still had regeneration pills in his storage device as well. Even though he currently had lots of internal injuries, and it would take longer for him to heal up even after using a regeneration pill, he still wouldn't need the band-aids because all scars would be cleared. Only the insta-regeneration pill could instantly heal him up, and it would be a waste to use it in this situation. Surprisingly, Gustav had brought his energy points down to 1 for the first time. He used so many powerful attacks and abilities since he was trying to fend off more powerful opponents. He still had normal energy from the bloodlines within him, but if he had consumed all his system energy, his body would have entered an automatic sleep mode till his energy points were restored to a certain extent. A trail of blood leaked out the side of Gustav's mouth, and he proceeded to clean it with an expressionless look. "You don't have to act so tough every time. It's okay to show pain. Being a mixed blood doesn't mean you're not part human," Boss Danzo voiced out as he finished wrapping the band-aids around Gustav's body. The truth was, Gustav was feeling immense pain from within at the moment. His body was regenerating after he regained consciousness after receiving Garu's continuous hits, but the moment his energy points reduced to 1, his regeneration deactivated again. He was fortunate to escape when he did, or he might have truly died this time. He had once again brushed with the face of death after so long. Gustav was the first Falcon rank that would live to tell the tale of clashing with Kilo-ranked mixed bloods. He recalled the orb he left there before he got teleported out of there, and knew it must have exploded in a few seconds as per his commands. It should slow them down a bit, Gustav thought. He didn't believe the explosion that consumed everything within a space of over 5,000 feet, which was equivalent to the size of 500 football pitches, would actually cause a lot of damage to 2 Kilo-ranked mixed bloods. He thought they would still find a way to escape before it could properly harm them. However, he was mistaken because they were in the heart of the explosion. Although they didn't die, it left them with a lot of damage. Gustav had no idea how powerful the energy container orbs in his possession was after mixing them with the crystallized energy he found in the MBO camp. Even when he kept a safe distance from it the last time he detonated one of them, he was still nearly obliterated. If it had been any weaker opponent, not even a piece of fabric from them would be left. The instant he arrived back in his room within the hotel, he got a call from the reception area where he was informed of 2 people asking to see him. This, of course, were Boss Danzo and Carices. They arrived here seconds before he teleported to his room. Right now, no one would be able to find them no matter how they searched unless both of them left the room. Carices stared at the city view from the massive window pane on the left side of the main room. "You sure are rich to be able to afford this," she voiced out while turning around to face Gustav on the sofa. "It's not my money," he responded while standing to his feet. However, he could still afford it if he wanted to. Gustav moved towards the room area to pick up a black hoodie sweater and proceeded to start wearing it. Makes me wonder what type of connections you have." Carices squinted her eyes as she stared at Gustav wearing the sweater. Gustav's facial muscles relaxed and his hair turned from whitish back to its original dirty blonde color while he wore the sweater. The instant his face poked out of the top, Carices spotted a different face. "Who? What? How?" Her eyes widened in astonishment as she stuttered, seeing the demonically charming young face. Gustav ignored her startled expression and moved back towards the sofa to take a seat. "Who are you? How did you do that?" she shouted out as she turned to face his direction again. "I already told you this, kiddo. He is Gustav, my very own boy from Plankton City," Boss Danzo responded proudly. "Yes, but how did he do that?" she questioned. "It's one of his bloodline abilities. The initial was a fake identity," Boss Danzo explained. "Wait. Your face looks a lot familiar. Are you Gustav Crimson?" Her eyes widened further as she asked. "Who wants to know?" Chapter 690. Wait. Your face looks a lot familiar. Are you Gustav Crimson? Her eyes widened further as she asked. "Who wants to know?" Gustav voiced out with a dismissive expression. "Ah, you used to be the #1 MBO test candidate. I can't believe you're the real deal." She looked astonished as she voiced out. Carices recalled that back then she would watch the competition with Marshall Rell. The way her admiration for Gustav increased could be seen in her eyes. Initially, she had thanked him for the rescue, but right now she looked more grateful than before. Gustav looked a lot more mature and handsome compared to the last time his identity was rampant across the media. It was not impossible to identify him at the moment if one looked closely, but the shapeshifting was a different case entirely. No one was aware that Gustav possessed such ability. "Keep this to yourself or you'll die." Gustav's eyes squinted as he voiced out. "I won't spill, I promise," Carices said with an excited expression. "Right now, they must be out there looking for you too. There is a possibility that these rotten people in charge might make use of law enforcement as well, even though they're doing illegal activities. So long as you two remain here, no one will be able to find you," Gustav stated. "How long are we going to hide in here?" "Mr. Eldorado promised he'll meet Marshall soon," Carices asked. Gustav now understood why Carices agreed to cooperate with Boss Danzo. It turned out that he explained to her that the parents were the type to not uphold their bargain and would try to kill her even if she won, which was also impossible. Boss Danzo was able to convince her eventually, telling her that she could still meet up with her lover if she cooperated with him, because if not, she'd die. The first 1 minute of their battle was actually serious according to Boss Danzo's plans. He wanted to show her that she truly wouldn't be able to defeat him no matter how hard she tried, which also made her have no choice other than cooperation. The rest of the battle was just them faking it and waiting for Gustav's signal from the window side. Gustav understood that Boss Danzo had lied to the girl about meeting Marshall, since that was impossible with the current state of things. "You two will stay here until things blow over. They'll try to find a way to get you both out of the city later," Gustav stated his plans. "What of your family?" Gustav asked Carices. "I don't know. I've been with the Rell family for as long as I can remember. My colleagues are like family to me," Carices answered with a crestfallen expression. "I knew Madame would never allow a lowlife like me to be with her son, so I tried to hide our relationship for as long as possible." She sighed while speak and sat on a chair behind. "Marshall never treated any of us badly, no matter how low in status we were compared to him, which is one of the reasons I love him," she added. "As a kid, you seem to not have grasped the reality of how powerless you truly are in a situation where people of high status are involved," Gustav spoke with a profound tone. "I'm sure Marshall would have done something to prevent the situation if he could, but you two forget that you were just kids. The ones who truly have the power and can change the narrative however they feel are his parents, Gustav added. Carices opened her mouth like she wanted to voice something out, but she stopped halfway and swallowed her words, letting Gustav's statements sink in first. Gustav turned towards the side where Boss Danzo was seated and spoke. You have to tell me everything. Why are you in the midst of these types of people in the first place, Boss Danzo? Boss Danzo? Carices voiced out while turning to the side to stare at Boss Danzo. Wasn't it Mr. Eldorado? Everyone knows you as that, Carices voiced out with a surprised tone. But after not receiving a response, she came to understand that it was another fake identity. Just how many secrets do these two have? She wondered internally. Boss Danzo sighed as he leaned forward and placed both his hands together. It all started months after my arrival within this city a year ago. Boss Danzo began narrating. Remember I told you I had some connections here, so I made use of that to get a cooking job? At that time, I was given the position of a chef within the Vanisher second household. I take care of their meals and request concerning foods. Boss Danzo went on to continue explaining how Mr. Vanisher's sixth mistress lived in that household with two of her children who belonged to Mr. Vanisher. They were living a very luxurious lifestyle, but Mr. Vanisher barely showed up in the household, even though Boss Danzo's employment sort of came through him. Boss Danzo only saw him once in 3 months of working there. The sixth mistress was young and well-behaved, but her kids were spoilt. Knowing their father was one of the most powerful and influential people in the city, they misbehaved a lot and treated the staff like shit. Boss Danzo would often try to correct some of their bad attitudes sometimes, but he would be met with deaf ears, and he also wasn't exclusive to their insults sometimes. However, Boss Danzo was liked by the two kids better than the rest of the staff. They admitted his meals were better than the former chef, and Boss Danzo just happened to have his way around kids. He was a grandfather, after all, so he made use of the wisdom he had built up from parenting over the years and was slowly getting through to the kids, teaching them basic etiquette. The mistress appreciated Boss Danzo's input and came to a realization. Chapter 691. A father figure was truly necessary for every household, and one of the reasons her kids were too spoilt was due to Mr. Vanisher never being available to do his fatherly duties. Mr. Vanisher only provided materialistic support, but besides that, he was never there to watch and guide his kids in their acts. But she was glad Boss Danzo was in the picture, and the kids listened to him. Everything was all going well until a certain day. Tanya was poisoned. She died in her sleep. Tears began gathering in Boss Danzo's eyes as he paused at this point. Tanya was the name of one of the two kids the sixth mistress bore for Mr. Vanisher. The other was a boy named Lucas. How did she get poisoned? Gustav asked. The dinner they took that night had a variant from an ingredient she was allergic to. I was told about her allergy and made sure never to add any ingredient containing that to any of their foods, but I wasn't informed about this one, Boss Danzo voiced out. No one knew about this one. And she went to bed just fine too, but never woke up the next morning, he added. Gustav could already guess that this was where everything went to hell. He knew Boss Danzo would never make the mistake of still serving a food laced with the allergy of his consumers. So it turned out this was totally an innocent mistake. Boss Danzo continued explaining and mentioned how he was taken into police custody. The sixth mistress totally ran mad and put all the blame on Boss Danzo, claiming he poisoned her kid. Mr. Vanisher had to eventually show up as well. Boss Danzo couldn't even get a word in because he was dealing with the rich and powerful here. Even the connections he had would not want to cross paths with Mr. Vanisher. With the direction in which things were headed, it looked like Boss Danzo would not even get a court sentence before getting sent to life imprisonment for murder or getting killed himself. He couldn't blame the sixth mistress. Her grief had taken over her sense of judgment, which blinded her to the truth. Lucas was the only one still on Boss Danzo's side, and even tried to make his mother see that it wasn't his fault, but she didn't listen. Even the staff within the household didn't take Boss Danzo's side. They all blamed him for not properly taking care of his duties. Most of them were jealous of him since he was favored by the young mistress and even Mr. Vanisher's kids. They knew that when these kids grew to be rich and powerful like their father one day, Boss Danzo would be remembered and he would gain a lot of benefits. Boss Danzo resigned himself to fate within the cells and didn't even bother trying to call anyone. He neither lamented about his misfortune or blamed anyone for it, including himself. He just didn't want to drag anyone into the big mess, since one of the most powerful people in the city was involved. Spending about a month behind bars without getting a trial, Boss Danzo was finally visited by someone on a fateful day. He came dressed in all black to hand me a way out. Boss Danzo voiced out with a recalling expression. You don't look like someone who would plot such a mishap. I can see it in your eyes. You're a father too, aren't you? Mr. Vanisher voiced out while standing within Boss Danzo's cell. Boss Danzo nodded in response, too tired to talk. He had already been questioned so many times. I believe it was truly as you said, but I cannot just let you go, Mr. Vanisher said and turned around, making his back face Boss Danzo. I lost a daughter. Imagine the number of resources I have spent on her so far. Wasted, he added. Boss Danzo was confused when he heard this because it sounded like Mr. Vanisher was more disappointed about spending resources on her rather than her death. I have a proposal to help me gain my resources back. You can have your freedom back afterward, Mr. Vanisher stated. What is it? Boss Danzo asked. This scenario was what prompted the creation of Mr. Eldorado, which was meant to protect Boss Danzo's original identity after he regained his freedom back. Boss Danzo agreed to fight in the underground battle facility a particular number of times, according to their contract, before he would be freed. Mr. Vanisher dropped the charges on him in the meantime and took him under his wing. Boss Danzo did his research and found out he'd be fighting criminals, so he wasn't so sad about it. To Mr. Vanisher's surprise, Boss Danzo turned out to be a sensation among viewers and made even more money than he expected for him. The next morning arrived and Boss Danzo already finished narrating. Gustav understood everything up to this point and saw how Boss Danzo had been exploited so far. Looking at things from a more logical angle, he shouldn't be blamed in any way since he was not informed about this allergy. The situation just happened to be so unfortunate that the meal was dinner and not breakfast or lunch. The girl would have survived if it was during the day since they would have noticed her being unusual, but it just had to be night. This means he will bring back the charges, Gustav muttered. He will make use of every force available trying to get me back. So yes, the cops will be a part of it, Boss Danzo responded. Gustav sighed, realizing the situation was truly a complicated one. But there was no way he'd let Boss Danzo handle it on his own now that he was here. How did you learn how to fight like that, though? Gustav asked another question that had been bugging him for some time. Oh, that. I learned, Boss Danzo responded with a look that depicted he was hiding something else. Chapter 692. Oh, that. I learned. Boss Danzo responded with a look that depicted he was hiding something else. When? The time frame between when you started the underground battle and when you were released is quite short. It's too little time for you to become this good in battle, Gustav voiced out with a tone of suspiciousness. Well, you see, I learned these fight moves decades ago, and now that I had no choice but to fight, I had to recall everything. Haha, Boss Danzo stated with a burst of light laughter. Gustav felt it made more sense now. So it turned out Boss Danzo was a good fighter in the past, but then he was only known as a good cook, not as a pro fighter. Mr. Vanisher must have also been surprised to see that Boss Danzo didn't have the countenance of a weak cook in the battle ring. This revelation had shocked him as well as the others since almost no one bet on him during his first fight, thinking he was going to lose. Those who bet on him in his debut racked up many wins. So Boss Danzo, there was a time in your life where you engaged in a lot of battles? Gustav asked. H&M, but all that is a story for another day. We all need to freshen up and get some rest, Boss Danzo responded. There are over 4 rooms here. You guys can pick any one of them. The room service will bring in some breakfast soon, Gustav said as he moved towards the balcony area. Carissa stood to her feet from the sofa area and moved towards the corridor by the right. Are you not going to rest too? Boss Danzo asked as he watched Gustav move towards the balcony area. I'm fine, Gustav said while pulling off his sweater and placing it on the railing at the balcony. The band-aids on his body looked reddish due to having soaked up some of his blood from the injuries he suffered during the last battle. Grabbing onto one side of the band-aids, Gustav proceeded to unwrap his body. In a few moments, his entire upper body was bare. The band-aids were lying on the floor by the side, and Gustav's well-chiseled muscular upper body glistened underneath the glow of the sunlight. There was not a single scratch or sign of injury to be found on any part of his body. Boss Danzo, who was worried earlier, became astonished as he saw that Gustav was completely fine now compared to last night. This was expected since Gustav had regained all his lost energy points, and his regeneration was reactivated. All his injuries, including internal ones, were good now. Right now, he was glad he had managed to save Boss Danzo within the first week he arrived here. If he had been a little slower, he had no idea how the match last night would have ended for them. Now the next plans would be the most difficult one since he couldn't let any of the both of them out in public. Quest successful. Gustav checked his notification bar that had been blinking with blue light since last night, since he ignored this message after escaping here. Emergency quest, successfully escaped from guards, Garu and Biden. Rewards, +4,000,000 EXP, +1 clue. Host has leveled up. After claiming his rewards, he was notified that he had once again leveled up, increasing his strength. This brought him another level closer to 50. So now, he only needed to level up one more time to reach 50. What baffled Gustav, however, was the +1 clue. He had never received something like this from the system. "Hey system, what's up with the clue?" Gustav asked. "If you're interested in knowing what it entails, just say the words, open clue," the system responded. "Okay, open clue," Gustav voiced out. Truant, a rectangular blue panel appeared in Gustav's line of sight, which displayed a few words. "Talk to Scientist Zill, that's it?" Gustav voiced out with a slightly confused expression. "What is going on?" Boss Danzo asked from behind as he arrived in the main room with a towel. "Nothing," Gustav responded to him, while still staring at the rectangular holographic display. Boss Danzo looked in his direction for a bit and couldn't see anything, so he moved towards the side to grab what he came to the main room for. Gustav was the only one who could see this panel. "What type of clue is this, and what is it supposed to help me with?" Gustav wondered internally, but unlike the last time, there was no response from the system. Talking to Scientist Zill, who was Damien's grandfather, seemed too crude since the subject of discussion wasn't even mentioned. However, Gustav was not about to back out because of this right now. He knew how tight-lipped the system was, so beyond this, no other information would be revealed. Even though Sir Zill helped with getting Gustav to Boss Danzo, Gustav was still wary of him. Every time they met, Gustav could feel this sense of uneasiness. He didn't understand why, but he just felt something was off about Sir Zill, and it wasn't his 12 feet height. The next plan for him at this point was to study the pattern of the Ring Lords now, and watch their next move so he could use it to his advantage. The days went by quickly, and Gustav kept Boss Danzo and Carissa's inside, still planning the right next course of action. Boss Danzo and Gustav spent a lot of time catching up with stories on how things had been going for Gustav during his absence. He wanted to hear all about, and also determine the current mental state of Gustav, and if he had let go of his past trauma. "Did you kill him?" Boss Danzo asked. "No. I pretended to and managed to fool everyone, but he's somewhere out there alive," Gustav responded. "So you were able to stop the war and also save a good soul. That's a lot of improvement right there," Boss Danzo voiced out with a smile. Chapter 693. If you had killed him too, it would be understandable since the situation warrants fast action, but I'm glad you didn't kill him. You found another way. This is one of the things I always try to tell you. Some acts don't need to be committed unless it's absolutely necessary. You act like a robot devoid of human emotions most times, but we know this isn't true. You can act heartless to scare the monsters away, but don't become the monster yourself. Always try to find another way in situations like that, and only go through with the hard decision if there is no other way, Boss Danzo voiced out lengthily. Gustav nodded. "Do you have a girlfriend now?" Boss Danzo suddenly asked. "Huh? What? No. Yes. I mean, I don't know." Gustav stuttered as he tried responding. "Ha ha ha, your expression says it all." Boss Danzo laughed as Gustav displayed a very human side for the first time in a long time. No, she's not. I mean, we didn't. We only. Gustav kept stuttering. picturing the face of a cute girl with silver and pink-colored hair in his mind. So you do have a girlfriend, eh? So much for marrying my granddaughter. You sneaky cheater. Boss Danzo smiled cheekily as he voiced out. Boss Danzo and Gustav's relationship hadn't weakened in the slightest. There was nothing Gustav couldn't tell Boss Danzo. Boss Danzo would give him advice, and they would laugh and crack jokes together. Boss Danzo was still Boss Danzo, and Gustav realized just how much he had missed having this man as a part of his life. Boss Danzo to him was still the father he had never had, which was why secretly Gustav longed to always hear his raspy voice say, "My son?" It would sound repressing to him if it was somebody else, but Boss Danzo's case was entirely different. Days went by, turning to weeks as both Boss Danzo and Carices remained indoors. The city had turned crazy in the past few weeks. Boss Danzo and Cherisas pictures were everywhere. A bounty of 1,000,000 ceros had been placed on both their heads, so at the moment, even normal civilians and tourists were searching for them. This just meant Mr. Vanisher had re-engaged on his word now that Boss Danzo's face was everywhere. He was already popular from the underground fights, but now his face was even more popular due to the recent train of events. Now there were law enforcement agencies and even powerful mixed bloods within the city trying to find him as well. This increased the difficulty level of getting them out of here. Presently, Boss Danzo was being charged with 3 felonies. One regarding the underground battles, another involving the death of Mr. Vanisher's child, and the third involving the kidnap of Carices. The whole situation had been twisted to look like Carices was kidnapped by Boss Danzo and his accomplice Gustav. Of course, the picture of Gustav circulating everywhere was the fake identity he used in getting them out of the underground battle arena. So no matter how much they tried, they could never find him. That wasn't an issue in any way. Now Gustav was planning on getting a private jet to get both of them out of the city before anyone figured out where they were. Even though staying indoors helped in preventing anyone from locating them, it wasn't foolproof. There were already people who had voiced out they saw Boss Danzo within the Taquan district. Since mixed bloods were also involved, there was a possibility that, like him, someone could use an ability to scan all the buildings within the district. Even if none of the mixed bloods trying to catch Boss Danzo had an ability similar to that, there were still advanced technologies. He felt staying here for too long would be bad since it was unpredictable to tell how things would go. Gustav got off a call and moved towards a part of the living room to take his jacket off a stand. Looks like it will still delay for about a week more, Gustav muttered. He had been in this city for about 3 weeks now. If his plans were moved back by another week, he would have spent a month here. Weave, 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 the sound of slashing cut across the air from the far end of the main room. A beautiful-looking 16-year-old clad in black shorts and a blue sweater kept swinging blades around. About 7 daggers floated around her as she swung 2 around. "I'm going out. Make sure you remain indoors," Gustav voiced out. "When do I get to see Marshall?" Carices asked with a low tone before Boss Danzo, who was sitting on the sofa, could say anything. "You might never get to meet him," Gustav blurted out, not sugarcoating his words in the slightest. Carice's face turned dark as she heard that. "You promised I would meet?" Before she could complete her sentence, Gustav interrupted her. "He promised, not me," he stated. Boss Danzo gulped down saliva as he saw Carices turn to face him. "He did it for your own good, so behave yourself," Gustav voiced out and proceeded to turn around to leave. "You both are liars. I want to leave. I want to see Marshall. It's boring here." Carices voiced out in pain as tears slid down her face. Krrrychhh, a force spread around her, causing the walls around her to vibrate as the daggers floated in front of her. "Have you seen the city? Of course not, you're inside. The moment you step out there, you will be caught." Gustav paused his steps and voiced out. "I want to see Marshall," she shouted out with a tone of rage and pain, causing the daggers in front of her to shoot out towards Gustav. Gustav turned around and sensed the projectiles headed for him, but he didn't move out of the way. Cank, clank, clank, clank. All the 7 daggers hit Gustav's chest and belly area. They made a metallic sound after the collision and fell to the floor, unable to pierce through Gustav. Chapter 694. Cank, clank, clank, clank. All the 7 daggers hit Gustav's chest and belly area. They made a metallic sound after collision with his chest and fell to the floor, unable to pierce through Gustav. Gustav stared at his upper clothes and could see the holes created from the daggers. Even though his body defense was very tough, the same couldn't be said for his clothes. At this point, Carice snapped out of it as her eyes widened. I didn't mean to. She took a step backward as she stuttered. Step, 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 step. Gustav began stepping forward towards Carice's position. His face didn't show any expression as he walked forward while maintaining eye contact. Carice found herself stepping back subconsciously till her back was placed against the massive window pane in front. Gustav arrived in front of her and looked down to stare at her. I am sorry, she blurted out with an apologetic gaze. I will let it slide this time. Next time, control yourself. If your bloodline was more powerful, you might have hurt someone, Gustav voiced out with a calm tone. Carice's was a mixed blood all this time, and her ability was related to telekinesis, just that it was weaker and couldn't be compared to that of Indrix. In fact, no other mixed blood who had a telekinesis-related bloodline could be compared to that of Indrix. His bloodline was just too unique. Gustav's eyes glowed red as he stared into Carice's eyes like he was staring into her soul. If you know me well enough, you'll choose not to misbehave. If I have to choose between saving you and saving Boss Danzo, I will not hesitate to choose him. We're only doing you a favor, Gustav added, causing Carice's to subconsciously tremble in fright. Don't be too harsh on her. She's just a kid. Kids don't think before they do things. Boss Danzo voiced out from behind, trying to plead on her behalf. Gustav turned around at this point and proceeded to go change his top. In a few seconds, he left the penthouse. Yeah, I'm coming over now, he voiced out through his communication device as he arrived at the ground floor and proceeded to move towards the parking lot. Good day, sir. Where to? Fumar was already waiting for him with the hover limo. Grayscale Pharmaceuticals, Gustav responded as he moved into the car. He didn't bother trying to correct Fumar with, "Don't call me sir, Gustav is okay," since Fumar never listened anyway. "Right away, sir," Fumar said with a smile and proceeded to move to the driver's seat. In a few seconds, they were out of the parking lot, moving towards the area where Grayscale Pharmaceuticals was located. "It's been some time, sir. How have you been doing?" Fumar began engaging Gustav in small talks again as they glided across the streets. In a few minutes, they arrived in front of Grayscale Pharmaceuticals, and Gustav stepped out of the vehicle. The building was still as magnificent looking as ever, an upside-down silver pipette. The moment Gustav went through the entry point, he could see the 12-feet-tall grandpa waiting for him already. It was still fascinating that someone who looked like a 30-year-old giant was actually a grandfather. Sir Zil was over 70 years of age, and he could go out to pick chicks with his looks and height and definitely wouldn't get turned down. "Gustav, you are welcome once again," Sir Zil voiced out and stretched out his hand for a handshake. Gustav received it with a nod. "You know why I'm here. Let's head to my office," Sir Zil proposed without wasting any more time. While they headed for the last floor, Sir Zil asked some questions. "I sent people over, but they were unable to get through to you," Sir Zil stated. "Yeah, I know about those. I can't entertain visitors in the meantime. I was busy," Gustav responded. Does being busy involve tending to Mr. Eldorado and Carice's?" Sir Zil asked bluntly. Who knows? Maybe it was a part of it," Gustav responded calmly. "Your disappearance in the underground battle facility and the fact that you were not spotted by anyone all through leaves room for a lot of imagination," Sir Zil stated. Gustav wasn't even trying to hide anything. Since he went with Sir Zil and Damien, it would be easy for both of them to piece things together and figure out that he had something to do with both of them escape. He had shown interest in Boss Danzo and even mentioned how he was family, and he only attended the event because of Boss Danzo in the first place, so only a stupid person wouldn't be able to tell he was involved. Going AWOL for over 3 weeks was just an additional piece. The only thing that left room for doubt was the identity used, which was different from Gustav's original identity. Gustav wasn't worried about Sir Zil and Damien knowing the truth, because Sir Zil would suffer negative consequences if he ever revealed that the perpetrator was able to infiltrate due to his help. It would cause more harm than good. "Y'all were able to get out safely, that's good," Gustav voiced out. How did you manage to pull it off? I'm curious, Sergil mumbled. There were lots of guards in the facility, and some of them even had the same bloodline rank as Gustav, yet he was able to evade them easily. He also heard about the 2 powerful guards sent after him, who were among the most powerful mixed bloods in the city. I was lucky, Gustav responded. The destruction of the tunnelways. Was that you? Sergil inquired while recalling how it made the news. The caving in of the burning sands that covered a radius of over 5,000 feet was a wild sensation that was featured all over the news. The authorities were still trying to find out what was responsible for such an occurrence, but no matter how much they inspected, it was impossible to trace the origin. Chapter 695. There was no trace of an underground tunnelway. Every single solid structure was reduced to nothing. What does it matter anyway? I was able to get away, and that's what matters. Sorry for putting you guys in a tough position, Gustav voiced out in response. It's all right. We were able to get out without a scratch, Sergil smiled while speaking. He wasn't even close to being as powerful as this a year ago. Just what type of training do they undergo in the MBO? Sergil was actually very astonished internally. Even though Gustav didn't outright admit to being the cause of the explosion, it was obvious that he was. Sergil also heard about how the 2 kilo-ranked guards sent after him were decimated by the blast, receiving a lot of damage. Kilo-ranked mixed bloods all across the world were seen as powerful big shots, and only around 30% of mixed bloods across the world achieved this rank. Mixed bloods who achieved this level were always given respect across the world since it was only 3 levels away from the ultimate alpha level. Although the difference in strength between both levels was astronomical, it was still a rank most mixed bloods struggled to attain. To have the ability to damage mixed bloods on the kilo rank level was no small feat. Maybe I should suggest that to him, Sergil thought as they arrived at the last floor. A few moments later, they arrived in Sergil's office. Big brother Gustav, Damien voiced out in excitement the moment they got in. Damien, Gustav greeted him back and proceeded to sit up ahead. It's truly him, a girl sitting by Damien's side voiced out. She had long black hair, a cute teen face, and eyes similar to that of Sergil. Hey Siri, where are your manners? Damien voiced out. Oh sorry, I was just... Thanks for the other day, big brother Gustav, she said while standing to her feet and bowing slightly. It's fine, you don't have to. Gustav paused there, recalling that no one ever listened anyways. These days people showed him a lot of respect when he preferred them being casual, but no matter how much he voiced for them to just act normal, they wouldn't. Damien was one of the few that didn't overdo it. Kids go have fun outside. Me and Gustav have important things to discuss, Sergil commanded as he sat on the sofa opposite Gustav's. Siri stood to her feet to comply with the command while Damien disagreed. But grandfather, I am already a part of whatever you two want to discuss. Only Siri should leave, he voiced out. You have been involved enough. What is to come is not any business of yours. Now leave. Sergil didn't leave room for disagreement. Damien still wanted to disagree, but he saw Gustav do a right side nod which meant behave, so he decided to listen and left with Siri. You know the current situation keeps blowing out of proportion. What if they find them? How do you intend on handling it? Sergil asked after both grandkids left. I'm handling it. I will have it all sorted out soon, Gustav responded. But this isn't why you wanted to see me, is it? Gustav added while squinting his eyes. It's part of it. I was a bit worried as well, but anyways, let's go to the main reason why I want to see you, Sergil stated. Do you remember the first day you arrived here? I mentioned something about a serum, Sergil added. Yes. You called it the Arkham serum if I remember correctly, Gustav replied. Exactly, Sergil said before pausing for a bit. I need your help with the serum, he added. My help? How? Gustav questioned. Sergil explained that the other day, the people on a line were voluntary test subjects. The serum was not yet official, and they needed life subjects to test it on and affirm its safeness as well as prove that it did what it was meant to do. The people who volunteered would get a large sum of money if anything went wrong, or it would be passed to their immediate family members if they died. This wasn't against the law since no one was forced to try it out. The Arkham serum helps strengthen the DNA of normal people, Slakovs, and humans. Generally, Mixed bloods live a very long life. Most live up to 300 or 500 years of age, and some even live longer based on their strength. However, humans and Slarkovs still don't live beyond 100 to 120 years of age. The mixed bloods born to the normal human or Slarkov parents, or those who have loved ones who are normal, always wish to see their loved ones live for a longer time frame since they have no choice but to live for centuries, a privilege the normal people don't have. I created this Arkham serum to help counter that so they live as long as possible. The mixed bloods won't have to watch their loved ones die of old age, as well as the next generation after that too. They can grow old together, Sir Zill explained lengthily. Okay, so why do you need my help? Gustav asked. I stumbled into a problem while testing it with the subjects who volunteered. The desired effect on the DNA has not been achieved because humans and Slarkovs are generally weaker, Sir Zill voiced out. I already knew this and did what I could to make sure it wouldn't be a problem, but I still couldn't counter it. I need to test the serum with a stronger person and subject them to examination to determine what the factor I need to work on, Sir Zill added. You want to try it on me? Gustav pieced the rest together at this point. Precisely. I hope you can help me with this. Your body would negate the side effects others displayed since you're more powerful, and I only need to examine you for some time to figure out what to do next, Sir Zill said with a tone of confirmation. Chapter 696. Precisely. I hope you can help me with this. Your body would negate the side effects others displayed since you're more powerful, and I only need to examine you for some time to figure out what to do next, Sir Zill said with a tone of confirmation. So, you want me to be your lab rat? Gustav out with a surprisingly non-incessant look. Putting it that way makes things look a bit crude, but you are right. I want you to be my lab rat, Sir Zill answered. What if I say no? Gustav inquired. Well, I wouldn't be able to do anything. It all falls on your decision, yes or no. I will respect whatever you pick, Sir Zill responded with a smile. He's smart. He knows better than to cross me, so he's being respectful instead, Gustav thought. But even with this, the situation seemed a bit tricky. His body was a whole lot different from normal mixed bloods, so he wouldn't want his body to be examined by anyone just to make sure his secrets were kept safe. You're quite influential in this city, from what I've noticed. You can easily afford a mixed blood on my level of strength or higher and try the serum on them instead, Gustav stated. Well, the thing is, it would be a lot preferable if the subject had the ability to regenerate. I know you can regenerate, but it would be extremely tasking or borderline impossible to find a mixed blood with the ability to regenerate in this city, Sir Zill explained. I'm sure it can't be that hard. Use your connections to get one, Gustav responded and was about to get up at this point. Is that a no then? Sir Zill voiced out with a tone of defeat. Agree to his request, the system suddenly voiced in Gustav's head before he responded. What? Why? Gustav questioned internally. Just agree to it, Dumbo, the system insisted. All right. Gustav decided not to argue about it too much and finally responded to Sir Zill. Will you be the one conducting the test yourself? I want privacy, Gustav asked. Yes. Although having my team with me would make things faster, it is of no big effect if I do it myself, Sir Zill responded. All right then, they'll let you, Gustav stated. Is that a yes? Sir Zill voiced out excitedly. H&M, Gustav responded with a slight nod. Great. You are making an old man like myself get so excited. Sir Zill laughed lightly as he voiced out. Feel free to ask me for help with whatever issues you have in the future. So long as it is within my power, I will do it, he added with a tone of gratitude. Cool, can we get it over and done with? I need to get back to the penthouse, Gustav responded. Can you take a shot right now and come in tomorrow for your first test? Sir Zill asked. Sure, Gustav answered. Sir Zill proceeded to move towards the left side of his office and tapped the surface of the wall in a rhythmic pattern. Viewish, the wall shifted inside, revealing an entrance to a well-developed lab. The lab was not too large or too big. It seemed more like a personal laboratory. Sir Zill wasted no time in picking up a palm-sized syringe where a greenish liquid content could be seen within. In a few seconds, he moved out of the lab, and the entrance closed up. Arriving in front of Gustav, he spoke, They'll need to inject this into you. All right, Gustav proceeded to take off his jacket and roll his right sleeve up. Sir Zil moved the syringe closer to his bicep area and poked at his skin with the tip of the syringe. He mouthed in confusion. He tried slowly poking Gustav's arm again and with the syringe, but it felt like the sharp tip was being pressed upon an iron plate. Seeing as it didn't pierce through Gustav's skin after a few tries, he tapped the side of the palm-sized syringe. The needle area of the syringe suddenly turned red and began making sizzling sounds, depicting it had increased in temperature. Sir Zil proceeded to push the syringe forward again, trying to poke Gustav's arm with it, but to his utmost surprise, he was met with resistance once again. With the increased temperature, it should be stabbing through like it's going through butter. What is going on? He had an internal conflict seeing as it didn't go through. Looks like there is no standard medical equipment that can cut through my skin, Gustav voiced out. How is this possible? The mixed bloods with this type of thick skins never have a human look, and there are only a few of them. Sir Zil was astonished as he held the syringe up. Does how I consume it matter? Gustav asked while reaching out to take the syringe from Sir Zil. Well, I would say no and yes at the same time. It's less dangerous to have it and more faster to have it injected straight into your bloodstream, Sir Zil voiced out in response. I see, Gustav mumbled as he moved his right hand close to his left biceps area. His index fingernail grew in length, turning black and pointy at the tip. Poochie, he proceeded to stab himself straight in the arm, causing blood to dribble down his finger and arm. The moment he pulled his fingernail out of the wound he created, he stabbed the syringe into it and released the greenish content into his bloodstream. Sir Zil was astonished watching Gustav do this to himself. It took a high level of conviction to hurt yourself, and even higher without showing any form of expression of pain. He wondered if Gustav was a robot with the way his facial expression never changed while he did this. After he was done, he handed over the empty syringe back to Sir Zil. Is that all? He asked. Yes, that's it. You just have to come in tomorrow for the first examination, Sir Zil responded. All right, I'm leaving now, Gustav said, and proceeded to stand to his feet while rolling down his sleeves. Chapter 697. The injury had already stopped bleeding and began closing up the moment he finished injecting the substance. I'll be seeing you tomorrow then, Sir Zil said and extended a handshake. Gustav received his handshake and nodded before leaving the office. Sir Zil stared at the syringe, which had Gustav's blood on it with a look of intrigue. He proceeded to move towards the same wall that housed the entrance to his personal lab. Getting back to the penthouse, Gustav began questioning the system. Why did you tell me to agree to his request? You'll find out soon enough, the system responded. What do you mean by that? Gustav questioned again. Just hold on for a bit and you'll see. The system's tone of mysticism didn't help Gustav get any less curious. However, it wasn't that big of a deal to wait anyways, and since the system had told him specifically to agree, then it would have ways of protecting the secrets within Gustav's body. Although he had taken the Arkham, he didn't feel any different, so he wasn't worried that it was a malicious substance. If there was any toxin within, his toxin immunity would have acted up, but it would seem it was completely fine. The day went by quickly, and the next one arrived. Gustav had spoken to Boss Danzo and Carices the night before that he was planning on getting a private jet that would take them out of here. If they wanted to leave using a public aircraft, they would be caught since everything went through inspection. So, they had to wait for about a week more. He told Carices that he may find a way for her to chat with Marshall before they left, but it wasn't certain, and she shouldn't hold her breath. The main thing was survival at this point, and that would be impossible if any of them were caught. Gustav visited Grayscale Pharmaceuticals once again today. Sir Zil was already expecting him and instantly brought him to his personal lab. Gustav looked around and could see racks of holographic computation of files stored in a way that made them look physical. There were a ton of them with different names arranged by the side. Opposite them was where Sir Zil placed all sorts of laboratory equipment, and even artificial intelligent robots could be seen moving around. Even though it was a mini-lab, it could rival any lab in the world. There was a stretcher platform in the middle where Sir Zil directed Gustav to lay on. Gustav did as he was told while also taking off his upper wears. Sir Zil grabbed a piece of scanning equipment hanging upwards and shifted it to point at Gustav's body. Triria, it repeatedly scanned across his body and proceeded to display a holographic image of Gustav's internal structure. Closer outline of the cell area, Sir Zil voiced out as he began the inspection. Holographic images began appearing all around him, displaying different parts within Gustav's body. This, not this. No changes. A little derivation, he mumbled as he began sorting through them. After several minutes had gone by, he moved to the area where there was a holographic monitor and took his seat in front before beginning to compute some things. Gustav just looked around the place in boredom as Sir Zil examined his internal structure. He didn't have to be asleep for this and didn't even want to. He kept checking out different equipment with looks of fascination. Gustav was really interested in science, even though he was in a combat-based type profession. His eyes settled on the area where different files were outlined in holographic format. Kidney replacement terminology. Weight distribution. Gustav read some of the titles placed on different files. After checking them out for some time, he spotted one by the side which had the title, Planetary Placement Dimensional Theory. Gustav didn't know why, but this title kind of struck a chord within him. I thought he only dealt with medical-related practices. This is already diverting from his line of expertise, Gustav thought. I need a sample of your blood. Gustav was brought out of his thoughts by Sir Zil's statement. Sir Zil knew he'd be unable to extract Gustav's blood with any equipment available, so he had to ask for Gustav's help. In a few moments, Sir Zil was able to successfully get a sample of Gustav's blood with Gustav's help, of course. He went back to doing some tests and coming to inspect Gustav's internal structure again. After 2 hours, he ended today's examination session. Gustav put his upper clothes back on and stood to his feet. Sir Zil thought he was about to leave, but he saw Gustav suddenly walk towards the area where files were lined up in a holographic format. What are these? Gustav asked. Oh, those. Just research I have dropped or currently working on, Sir Zil answered. Is this among the ones you've dropped? Gustav asked while pointing to the one that piqued his interest earlier. The planetary placement dimensional theory. I dropped that over 20 years ago, Sir Zil answered with a light chuckle. It looks pretty interesting. Why did you drop it? Gustav questioned. So many reasons, but the one that matters most is not wanting to get on the government's nerve. Those savages might have tried something crazy if I didn't listen to them, Sir Zil responded. What does the government have to do with this? Gustav asked with a tone of suspiciousness. They just didn't want me delving into this one. Maybe ID have found something revolutionary, who knows? Well, I did find something, but I just have to stop it at that point, Sir Zil answered. What is the research about? Gustav's curiosity was piqued at this point. Just a theory, which I was getting close to proving with all my findings. Sir Zil paused at this point, thinking twice about whether or not to reveal it to Gustav. Well, I see planetary and dimensional, so I know it has something to do with space. You delved into those types of research back then? Gustav voiced out. Chapter 698. Well, I see planetary and dimensional, so I know it has something to do with space. You delved into those types of researches back then? Gustav voiced out. Yes, I was interested in different kinds of research back then, not just medical-related types, Sir Zil responded. Sir Zil proceeded to tap onto the planetary placement dimensional theory file. True in, it began displaying multiple square-shaped holographic images which had words written, and some displayed certain parts of space. These were the theories Sir Zil had put into scientific terms, and also computed his research to a certain level based on the subject. Gustav's eyes darted across the multiple holographic squares floating in the air. The processing speed of his brain was very fast, so he had already read through 17 of these outline theories in a span of 5 seconds. Gustav's eyes widened as he figured out what the research was all about before Sir Zil could explain anything. You think planet Humbad was never destroyed as well? Gustav voiced out as he kept scanning through the multiple theories. Yes, are you? Before Sir Zil could voice out his surprise, Gustav spoke again. A warp demolator. What's your basis on this? Oh, don't answer that. I see, Gustav muttered as his eyeball darted around the white space in his eyes with immense speed. Sir Zil couldn't understand what was going on here, so he stared at Gustav for a few seconds with an astonished look before deciding to speak again. This is 1/4 of my research. It took me around 10 years to gather this much information, Serzel stated. I have finished going through all of them, Gustav stated. What? Serzel felt his ears were playing tricks on him. Yes, I read them all and studied every single image as well. This is brilliant, Gustav praised. It hasn't even been more than a minute yet. It would take at least a week to go through all this, and comprehension would take even longer for a scientist. Serzel couldn't believe his ears as he voiced out. Well, I understand everything that I have read here, and I think the research should be continued, Gustav answered. You're joking. Serzel was still finding it difficult to believe. Test me, ask me any question, Gustav proposed. Okay, how large does the warp demolator have to be for a solar system to be swallowed? Serzel inquired. Quarter the size of neutron star, Gustav responded. Where does it take the solar system to? Serzel asked again. According to your theory, a different dimension, Gustav responded again. How big does a planet need to be to withstand the force of the pole? Serzel once again questioned. Roughly the size of the Earth. The bigger the planet, the higher the chances of it getting ripped apart during the pull, Gustav answered once more. Serzel's expression turned astonished more and more as he questioned Gustav. He asked a few more questions, and Gustav answered them all. What sort of being is he? Serzel thought in his mind as his jaw hung loosely. Do you believe me now? Gustav questioned. I have no more doubts. Only curiosity now, Serzel responded, still astonished. Your research. If you're correct and planet Humbad truly got swallowed up by the warp demolator, then where did the meteor showers from thousands of years ago come from? This was a question that kept bugging Gustav's mind. Well, I came across the warp demolator by mistake in space and almost got swallowed up along with my team. But you already knew that since you read everything I computed. Serzel realized he didn't have to explain much since Gustav had already read everything. Whatever planet the meteor shower came from which changed the state of Earth, it's definitely not planet Humbad. I am at least 90% sure planet Humbad is still in existence. I just needed more time to prove it. Serzel added. The scientists back then declared that the meteors were pieces from planet Humbad based on the scientific effects they brought to the planet. A lot of scientific breakthroughs and the creation of technologically advanced equipment were created because of the minerals that were found after the meteor shower. Even some Slarkovs claimed that some of these minerals existed on their planet, which was more than enough to prove the meteors were part of their home planet. So how could it not be planet Humbad? Gustav voiced out lengthily. Everything still seemed kind of wavy for him. True, but there could be another planet with similar minerals. It doesn't necessarily prove that it was planet Humbad. Also, it's just a small chunk that collided with Earth. If even half of the planet made contact with Earth, the entire Earth would be obliterated, Serzel voiced out. This could mean maybe a small portion of planet Humbad sustained damage since according to your theory, the size of the planet should be roughly around the size of Earth for it to safely be pulled by the warp demolator to another dimension. The research books have revealed that planet Humbad is indeed bigger than Earth, so maybe it took sustainable damage that didn't cause its destruction, Gustav thought. Exactly as I stated in the second quarter of my research, Serzel responded with a nod. Why did the government stop you from researching about this? Gustav asked with a look of suspiciousness. Who knows? Maybe they also have an idea about this but don't want it to be revealed, or maybe they're too scared of where this research might actually lead to and finding out that the history passed down for thousands of years was wrong. There could be a multitude of reasons, Serzel shrugged as he spoke. Those idiots. Gustav couldn't help but voice out because if this theory happened to be correct, that placed the Earth at risk as well. Instead of assisting Serzel in completing the research, they decided to kill it and pretend like this wasn't a threat. I want to know more, Gustav voiced out. Chapter 699. You can't. This is as much as you'll know, Serzel stated before tapping on a holographic keyboard. Troyant, the holographic squares began to disappear one after the other and returned back to the holographic file stationed by the side. Why don't you continue the research in secret? Gustav questioned. Because I can't. First off, it's too risky. I don't want them threatening me again. Secondly, I just can't because the third and fourth quarter of my research was confiscated by the government. Serzel stated. They confiscated it? Gustav was surprised since Serzel didn't mention this before. Yes, they really wanted me to stop. I was able to hide away the second quarter in another facility located in Brehuman City, but without the collective information from the third and fourth quarters of my research, it would be impossible for me to continue it, Serzel explained. Oh, I see. Gustav understood now as he stood by the side with a contemplative expression. I spent a lot of time and resources in gathering all those information. Alas, this happened. Serzel chuckled lightly with a tone of disappointment. Can I get the second quarter of your research? Gustav asked. Why? Serzel asked. I need it. As well as the third and fourth quarter too. I'm going to continue your research, Gustav voiced out boldly. What? Are you looking to get yourself in trouble? Serzel questioned with a worried tone. It's necessary. I find out more on this, Gustav responded. Not at the expense of getting yourself killed. Serzel shook his head in disapproval. Pretty much at the expense of getting myself killed since I will get killed if I don't gather more information on this, Gustav thought since he couldn't voice it out. I'm not so easily killable. Just tell me where I can find them, Gustav insisted. Serzel could see the look of conviction on his face, which was the type that said, I have nothing to lose. Serzel, on the other hand, had a lot to lose, which was one of the reasons he never went against the government. Sigh, all right then. Serzel finally gave in. The second quarter doesn't have a lot of information. It mostly contains footage from my journey across space, but it's still crucial to get it. Serzel began speaking. You'll need to visit the pharmaceutical branch I have in Brehuman City to get that. I don't want to have it moved due to the risk of getting the research stolen or anything bad happening to it. I hid it safely there, encrypted and protected, but I'll give you the passcodes so you can extract them when you visit, Serzel stated. Gustav nodded in appreciation. How do I get the third and fourth quarters of your research? He proceeded to ask. Like I told you before, it was confiscated by the government, so unless you can break into the Bureau of City's Research Center, you can't get them, Serzel said with a dismissive expression. The Bureau of City's Research Center? The one at the epicenter of Earth? Gustav inquired. Yes. As you may know, it is heavily guarded and have so many sections so it's borderline impossible to get in and find my research, Serzel stated. I never knew I'd have to go against the government this early. I guess it was inevitable, Gustav mumbled. What was that? Serzel asked. Nothing. Thanks for the information, Gustav smiled in response. Serzel was a bit creeped out by the smile since Gustav never smiled. The third and fourth quarter of my research are the cream of the crop. The third one explains how a warp demolator comes into existence, how it looks, and a few untested prediction methods. The fourth quarter is uncompleted, but that was when I was tracing planet Humbad's supposed new location using the specks of matter left in space by the warp demolator, Serzel explained. The first half of Serzel's statement made Gustav very intrigued, but the second half truly got him on his tippy toes because that was something he truly needed to complete one of his 5-year quests. Interesting. Looks like I need to visit Brehuman City soon, Gustav voiced out. Serzel could not understand why Gustav was so interested in this, but a part of him was glad that his research might finally be continued. He was still astonished that Gustav was able to grab onto everything and understand so soon when they had only been speaking about this for an hour or so. With this newly gathered info, Gustav left Grayscale Pharmaceuticals and went back to the penthouse. He wanted to digest the info more and bring up his own theories from them as well. He arrived back in the penthouse and moved straight to his room after a brief discussion with Boss Danzo and Carisas. This was why the clue said to speak to Serzel. You knew about his research, Gustav said internally. Not new, per se, more like I perceived it, the system responded. Is it safe to say you know everything about the research? It would save us a lot of trouble if you reveal everything to me right now, Gustav voiced in his head. Unfortunately, no, I do not. Some encrypted data are set to detonate and scramble their contents if I try to extract info from them, so you have to do this yourself, the system responded. Bummer, Gustav sighed internally. Yearly quest has been issued. Just as Gustav was thinking, a system notification appeared in his line of sight. Successfully infiltrate the Bureau of City's Research Center and get scientists' confiscated research. As expected, Gustav wasn't really surprised to see this quest. This just meant the system was practically aware of everything going on in the world, but would only reveal some things to Gustav or lead him using quests if it was related to their goals. Gustav knew it would take longer if he had to infiltrate a government-based facility and steal confiscated research. He would have to make good plans so he could get away without any consequences. Chapter 700. Gustav knew it would take longer if he had to infiltrate a government-based facility and steal confiscated research. He would have to make good plans so he could get away without any consequences. The mission to get the third and fourth quarter of Sir Zill's confiscated research would be based on intelligent planning and no brawl. The newly issued quest had a year duration, so he just had to make sure his plans were pushed forward in a year. The warp demolator, probably a space anomaly, Gustav thought. To think an entire planet could be shifted away from its position within the solar system. Not just that, to another dimension too, Gustav thought. Initially, he could barely piece together what could have happened to planet Humbad if it wasn't destroyed. However, after reading Sir Zill's research theories, it made sense how the planet remained unfound. The government had also sent teams to check for it in space, and even though space was endless, due to the upgrade in technology, they'd still be able to find it eventually since thousands of years had gone by already. Unless the planet was in another dimension. The theory of dimensions was in existence but unproven because there was still no known method of traveling through dimensions. Sir Zill might have figured it out if he was allowed to keep researching since he was already tracing the residue matter of the warp demolator back then. But now, it would be way harder for Gustav to continue it since all traces might have disappeared by the time he continued from the same point Sir Zill stopped. Dimension 6. Another issue would be getting the right order of numbers when I figure out how to travel in between them, Gustav thought. The system was a universal entity, so it wasn't surprising to him that it was aware of the numbers when Earthlings hadn't even figured out how to travel in between anyone yet. Gustav decided he would figure it out when the time came. The MBO camp the advanced weapons training was crazy today. Not being able to use our bloodline abilities and just relying on the mechs we were given was an unfair rule. Not even the special class cadets were able to defeat the seniors. The voices of first-year students walking along a path that led back to their residential areas could be heard. They were coming from a valley-like area where they had just finished advanced weapons training. Not everyone signed up for this particular one, but the special class candidates had to participate in every single battle class. This particular advanced weapons training was done using mechanical humanoid-looking bots. The mechs ran on internal energy sources as well as the bloodline energy from a mixed blood. If a mixed blood was strong enough, they would be able to dish out attacks that were 10 times more powerful using the mechs. They had a mock battle with some seniors, and all lost. Some were even unable to control the mech properly when within. It was the most difficult training out of anyone they had undergone since they began training almost a year ago. Alevra was the only first year who was able to tie with a senior. Every other mixed blood, special classes included, lost. Some mixed bloods even managed to deplete their bloodline energy completely during the training. Damn, that was tough. I lost an arm, E voiced out as he walked in the middle of the group. The mech is good for increasing battle strength, but mobility is greatly reduced, and it wears out the user quickly. In a battle of attrition, the force whose troops make use of only mechs would lose even if their opposition are just mixed bloods without any weapons, Falco analyzed. The others also brought forth their points: Glade, Matilda, Rhea, and Teamy. Only Angie and Eldris didn't speak yet. You all had your energy depleted quickly because you guys don't try to control the amount of bloodline energy being absorbed from your body, Eldris finally spoke. Although I also lost, I was able to last as long because I regulated the amount of energy being drawn from me to feed the mech. The mech also has its internal energy core. Balancing the energy withdrawal for both will make things smoother, he added, causing all of them to show looks of contemplation. They decided that during the next training, they would put this into trial. Angie, are you okay? EE voiced out from the side. Yeah, I'm good. Just taking notes, she responded with a smile. Okay. EE raised his thumb up in response with a smile as well. Y'all remember only about a month is left before we embark on our first mission, Teamy voiced out with a tone of excitement. It's been a year since we arrived here already? How time flies. Matilda said with a tone of astonishment. Does that mean my rival will soon be back? Haha, I must prepare a proper welcome for him. Defeat. Rhea started with a burst of light laughter. They kept discussing till they arrived at the crossroad, which led to separate residences. They had pathways here. Angie was silent throughout the journey back with Matilda and Glade, which normally would be unlike her. However, ever since the incident with Indrik, Angie had turned quieter. They all felt it was a phase, and she'd get out of it soon. Meanwhile, in Angie's head, she recalled an incident that happened recently. A cadet on her team got blasted backward during training. His body traveling across the air was slow to Angie due to her speed, but just when she was about to help her teammate, she froze. Unpleasant memories plagued her mind as a loud voice rang out in her head, "Help others and get betrayed." Her teammate ended up breaking his spine after hitting a pillar, but fortunately, it wasn't something regeneration pills couldn't fix. This wasn't the first time such an occurrence was taking place. Chapter 701. Anytime she wanted to assist someone with anything, she would freeze and be unable to help them due to this. Angie didn't know what was wrong with her, but she didn't tell anyone and hoped daily that it would stop. With the way things were going, she might never be able to render any help to anyone ever again. Angie, she was brought out of her reverie by Glade's call. Yeah, she answered. Why are you zoning out? Matilda just asked if we wanted to hang out in her room, Glade stated. Oh, a wry smile appeared on Angie's face as she stared at the both of them. Not today. I still have something to do, Angie responded. All right, come join us if you're free later, Matilda stated as they arrived at their residence. Angie went straight to her room, while Matilda and Glade moved towards Matilda's room. Something's off with her. Glade spoke with a look of suspiciousness. Definitely. Maybe she hasn't completely recovered from the accident, Matilda said with an understanding look. I just wish the old Angie would come back, Glade voiced out with a worried tone. She will. We just have to give her time, Matilda said before they walked into her room. Burning Sands City. Several days had gone by in the blink of an eye. Gustav had been visiting Grayscale Pharmaceuticals daily, and Sir Zil was still examining the state of his internal structure and was coming close to a breakthrough. Gustav would engage him in talks after the examination session about the planetary placement dimensional theory. Sir Zil would have no option but to spill out information after information, increasing Gustav's knowledge on these daily. Gustav still didn't feel any different days after taking the serum. The system explained to him that it had analyzed the foreign components in his body and isolated them, which is why Sir Zil is able to study them. Originally, Gustav's internal system would have swallowed it up and made it completely disappear, which would be a waste of time on Sir Zil's side since he would be looking but wouldn't find them. This was why the system handled things the way it did. It might only take a session more or two for Sir Zil to finally complete the amended version of the Arkham serum. Besides this, only about 3 days were left till the arrival of the private jet Gustav planned to use to get Boss Danzo and Carices out of the city. After the day's session and more discussion with Sir Zil, Gustav headed back to the penthouse. He got back to the penthouse around evening time. The moment he walked in, he could sense that something was amiss. Spreading his senses around, he couldn't sense anyone within the penthouse. Where did they go? Gustav instantly became worried as he was unable to sense them within the penthouse. He didn't bother trying to call out their names since his perception wouldn't fail him. Gustav proceeded to move towards the balcony area. Pa. Stepping on the rails, he leaped upwards and slapped his hand on the edge of the roofing area, causing his body to spin repeatedly in the air as he ascended. Gustav landed on the rooftop and proceeded to spread out his perception again. It spread past several floors, allowing him to sense every life form within before extracting it. He still couldn't find them. His perception wasn't powerful enough to cover the entire building, but Gustav could more or less assume that they weren't in the building at this point. His eyes glowed a profound red light with green and gold in the middle. Activating life signs tracking, unlike the last time where Gustav had to ask for help to find Boss Danzo. This time he had saved Boss Danzo's life sign to make for situations such as this. His eyesight darkened as Boss Danzo's life sign appeared in his line of sight. ZZHHRHRRHHH in the next instant, His vision was pulled to another place. He could see the vision seemed unbalanced as it shook up and down, which meant Boss Danzo was currently running. This is... Gustav noticed a sign up ahead along the streets where Boss Danzo was running towards. Darby Delights. He was instantly able to recognize the place as one of the restaurants in the Taquan district. Just as he wanted to retract his eyesight, he spotted a figure up ahead, standing atop the structure. Since he was seeing from Boss Danzo's point of view, he was unable to properly define who the person was, but from the figure, he could tell it was Carice's. The building was still hundreds of feet away from Boss Danzo's position. What is she doing? Just as this thought came to Gustav's mind, Gustav could see the figure raise something up. Thush, a bright light, suddenly burst forth from the object the figure was holding. At this point, Gustav retracted his sight and could see the bright light shooting into the sky from his position up here. That place was close to the eastern edge of Taquan district, which was over 100 miles away, yet the light was bright enough to be seen from his position. That stupid girl, Gustav cussed underneath his breath as he charged forward. Zoom, a burst of wind blasted in every direction as he leaped from the edge of the rooftop, causing it to quake lightly. Plap. Pa. Gustav's jacket made slapping sounds across the air as his body traveled from the top of the skyscraper towards the next, which was over 1,000 feet away. Bam! He landed on it and proceeded to charge forward with immense speed again before leaping off once more. Circular waves spread across the air as Gustav kept leaping from skyscraper to skyscraper, headed in the direction of the light, which was slowly dying down. He spotted a chopper moving towards the source of the light from far away and sped up. Zwyish at this point, he was moving close to the speed of sound, jumping across multiple buildings in one go. Chapter 702. Zwyish at this point, he was moving close to the speed of sound, jumping across multiple buildings in one go. Combination has been activated. Sprint plus dash. His figure turned super blurry as he blasted across rooftops and then activated super jump. Thuum, the top of a building cracked and came to the brink of crumbling as his body soared across the air like a shooting rocket. The chopper flying only felt immense wind suddenly blow it aside. And the next thing that happened was some rotors suddenly crumbled apart, and they began falling. Luckily, they weren't too distant from the rooftop of a skyscraper. They ended up landing right atop a skyscraper without any real accidents. However, this ended up making the cops get stranded on the rooftop, unable to attain their goal of reaching the source of light. FWWHISSHH, Gustav landed on a mass structure in a few seconds and spotted the area where the light had come from a few thousand feet ahead. He activated super jump again, ascending thousands of feet into the air as his body traveled forward like an arc cutting through the sky. God Eyes has been activated. While his body was traveling across the air, he used God Eyes to zoom in on the building. He could see several figures headed for the rooftop, and one was even close to arriving there while Carices stood in place looking down at the city. Gustav was incensed at this moment, but he still had to save her. Size manipulation has been activated. His right arm extended forward while enlarging massively. Carices heard the sound of something tearing through the air and looked up, only to see a massive hand extending towards her. The hand was so massive that it covered a quarter of the rooftop, and before she could react, her entire body was snatched. Fyi, Gustav's body blasted past the rooftop and kept soaring ahead with Carices in his grip. He deactivated size manipulation, causing his arm to return to its normal length. Carices looked upwards and scrutinized the family-looking person, holding onto her as the heavy winds blew across her face. Gustav, she voiced out with a tone of confusion. The instant they disappeared into the distance, several figures arrived on the rooftops dressed in dark outfits. One of them, putting on purplish shades goggles, stared at a part of the sky and pointed there. They went in that direction. However, the instant he said that, his face shone confusion. I can't sense them anymore, he voiced out. Do we give chase or not? The third figure by the right voiced out. Let's head in that direction. He voiced out and shot out some weird whitish tubes from his hand. The tubes connected with the window pane of the skyscraper up ahead and pulled the figure forward. He traveled across the air while being pulled by the tubes. The others made use of different means to also travel the air towards the next skyscraper. Gustav was still holding onto Carice's with one arm as he traveled across the air. But he has made use of the last 2 invisibility chips he had. He stamped one to his forehead and the other on Carice's forehead while leaping from building to building. During the period of their invisibility, he changed directions several times to avoid being traced. After changing directions repeatedly, he finally picked a direction to head in. Super Jump has been activated. He activated Super Jump again and leaped forward with intensity. Gustav landed on a building rooftop after 20 seconds of soaring across the air. Through he proceeded to leap away again, crossing several thousand feet once more. Repeating this a few times, they arrived close to the southern edge of the city. Bam! Gustav landed on another rooftop. The instant he landed, Carice's fell to her, but looked up to see the dark look on Gustav's face. She subconsciously crawled backward till her back hit the pillar in the middle of the skyscraper. "You idiot!" Gustav voiced out with a tone of anguish. "I don't know why I did that. I swear one moment I was in the apartment, and the next I woke up to find myself on that rooftop," she voiced out with a tone of confusion. "Don't lie to me. Is that a secret signal you were supposed to use to contact someone?" Gustav asked. "Yes. I and Thomas each have a pair, but I was never going to use it," she voiced out hurriedly. "You little..." Gustav couldn't express how disgusted he was feeling at the moment staring at her. "But I didn't." She was about to voice out again when Gustav leaped off the building. "Stay here." The last words he voiced out echoed across the air as his body blasted forward with immense speed. Carice held her head with her hand. Why did I do that? She wondered. But at the same time, she wondered if Thomas actually came like they planned he would if she ever made use of the light sticks. Gustav was headed back to the initial location as fast as possible because of Boss Danzo. Carice's was close to being caught by the forces that were rushing up towards the rooftop, so Gustav had no choice but to get her first. Since there was practically no time, he just had to keep going till they were a safe distance away. He had taken precautions to make sure they weren't caught earlier, but now he had to get back for Boss Danzo. He felt Boss Danzo was in a much safer situation, so he wasn't too worried. Leaping across several rooftops and from window panes to window panes, Gustav traveled very fast. The number of buildings he had left cracks on this night was unknown. If he could be caught, he'd have to pay for a lot of collateral damage, the force of his legs slamming onto buildings every few seconds. Chapter 703. Traveling would be easier if I could fly, Gustav thought. Leaping from building to building was pretty fun, especially when he was able to cross 2 or 3 streets in a single leap. However, the downside to this was he would still have to land. What would happen when he had no platform to land on? Thinking about this, Gustav felt he should do something about this later when he had finished dealing with the situation at hand. Bam! He landed on a building opposite where he found Carice's earlier and activated God eyes. As his vision turned red, he scanned across the building first off and noticed that only a few officials were there. The figures he saw earlier climbing upwards to meet Carice's were nowhere to be found in the vicinity. The cops there were investigating the surroundings, but it was a waste of time since they wouldn't find anything. Gustav proceeded to look downwards where he sensed Boss Danzo to be earlier. The streets were crowded with people all around staring in a particular direction and speaking loudly. Gustav scanned every single person on the streets around the vicinity but still couldn't find Boss Danzo. He looked around the neighboring vicinities as well since God Eyes could now travel as far as 10,000 feet, which was over 3 kilometers. After looking around for some time and still not finding him around, Gustav deactivated God Eyes. Maybe he went back to the penthouse, he thought, and proceeded to stand to his feet. Just as Gustav turned around and was about to leap away, breaking news. The notorious Mr. Eldorado has been caught. The massive holographic screens all across the city suddenly lit up with this announcement. Gustav turned around the instant he heard that. What? He voiced out as he stared at the holographic monitor positioned in the middle of the main highway. Footage from the BSBF Precinct 3 will be displayed in a few seconds. Gustav felt his ears were playing tricks on him as he stared at the screen with wide eyes. TSSSHHH, a static wave rang out before the footage changed. The front of a police station that read BSBF Precinct 3 was displayed, and several official hovercars arrived on the scene. Everyone's eyes focused on the cars, and in the next instant, they watched the cops getting out of the car with someone in their midst. Boss Danzo, Gustav muttered underneath his breath as he saw the cuffs of restriction on his wrist. Boss Danzo was pulled out of the hovercar and surrounded by more than 17 cops, all pointing weapons at him as they moved towards the entrance of the precinct. He had his face hung low as he slowly walked towards the precinct with a smile on his face. This smile made the cops even warier of him as they watched his every move, ready to open fire if he tried anything. Shit. Gustav didn't usually curse, but this time he couldn't help it. Just when I was this close to getting them out of the city, Gustav clenched his fist with a look of frustration as he voiced out. Now that Boss Danzo had been caught, the situation had taken a turn for the worse. Gustav just couldn't show up like that or try anything silly since the authorities were now involved. Although he didn't care that he was an MBO officer, he would throw away that title if it meant saving Boss Danzo, but he still had to think of his next action properly. If he handled the situation anyhow, he would also be implicated, and that wouldn't help anyone, not Boss Danzo and not himself. This child, Gustav was about facepalming as he thought of Carissa's. This is making me reconsider ever having children in the future, he thought as he turned around. There you are. A figure suddenly appeared in front of him. I knew I sensed right. Just as the figure voiced out again, a fist appeared in front of his face. Bam! A collision rang out as the figure got blasted backward and slammed into the building on the other side, breaking right through it. You caught me at a bad time, Gustav mumbled as he lowered his arm and squinted his eyes. The figure whose dark mask had fallen off found himself laying amidst a pile of wood and rubble within the office he got blasted to after receiving a punch from Gustav. Gustav took a few steps forward as he spotted two figures flying across the air from the top of the building he had just sent the first one flying into. Scree! A low wave was suddenly blasted forth from the one on the left. The wave was not visible, but it sounded quite violent. Spreading across the area, people on the streets suddenly started falling to their knees and holding their heads in pain. As the two figures landed, they stared at each other in confusion. Gustav was unaffected by the waves, which was clearly a mental attack. You used telepathy? Gustav asked the one on the left. How are you not affected? A deep voice was heard as the figure questioned with a confused tone. I take that as a yes, which means you're responsible for the current predicament. Gustav instantly pieced everything together, and his face turned dark. Where's the girl? Hand her over, and we might spare you. The one on the right voiced out as golden glowing circles began to appear all around him. Originally, I would hold back, but not this time, Gustav voiced out, causing them to look at each other in confusion again. Combination has been activated. Sprint plus dash. Mutated bull plus blood wolf plus demonic bunny plus Calapasoul plus Saverina serpent. This was the first time Gustav was combining 5 transformations all at the same time, and he had no idea what the final product would be. He just wanted to one-shot this idiot due to the amount of anger he was feeling and get out of here to make plans and save Boss Danzo. Chapter 704. He just wanted to one-shot these idiots due to the amount of anger he was feeling and get out of here to make plans and save Boss Danzo. His skin turned purple with golden plaited scales as a massive silver-colored horn grew out of his forehead, and he turned extremely muscular, reaching a height of 8 feet. Golden thorns grew out of his fist area as his face also transformed to ashen white color. The figures could feel the immense amount of pressure and power coming from this being that hadn't even completely transformed yet. They subconsciously shrank back and swallowed saliva. Attack him now, you idiot. The one with the golden circles surrounding him voiced out. Thy waves and golden beams shot towards Gustav in the midst of transformation. However, to their disappointment, a weird force field appeared around Gustav, preventing the attacks from making contact. 5000 EP. His transformation was completed at that point, and what was standing in front of them was a menacing-looking creature with glowing white eyes, purplish and golden-colored scales covering some parts of his body, and muscular-looking 9 feet tall physique. Oh shit! The second one voiced out as Gustav turned to face him. I will only be able to maintain this for a few seconds before running out of energy, Gustav thought as he felt his body radiating with immense energy. A blasting sound rang out as cracks spread across the entire rooftop. The one using telepathy only blinked once, and the next thing he knew, he had a massive hole in his chest with Gustav's right hand within. What? This was the last word he muttered before falling from the rooftop. Blood splattered all across the place as a massive blast that seemed to have been delayed rang out again. The falling body blasted into pieces, raining blood and body parts all across the window panes of the buildings by the side. Screams of panic could be heard next down below as it rained blood and body parts. The other one by the side who had witnessed this was about to turn around and run for his life when Gustav suddenly appeared behind him in an instant. Gustav gripped his neck from behind and ran forward. His body blasted forward with immense speed towards the opposite building, where he sent the other one flying earlier. The other one, who had just finished stabilizing his body and was heading for the hole in the wall, suddenly heard a loud whooshing sound. Fulum-shum-shum-sha? Next thing he knew, a familiar face bashed straight into his own, knocking them both flying backward. Boom! Gustav was still holding onto the neck of the leader while blasting his face through the walls of this building. He had unknowingly blasted the other dude's head off due to the immense speed. Bang! 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 In nearly an instant, they had arrived on the other side of the building after he had bashed his face through every single solid barrier in their path. A completely ruined face could be seen as Gustav landed on the rooftop of the next building. Plop! He dropped the body right there since half of the leader's head was already gone. He was long dead, just like the rest of his subordinates. Gustav felt like he was extremely light on his feet at this moment. The instant he pushed himself forward, a purplish streak cut across the air with immense speed, causing him to instantly disappear. He was making use of so much combination right now. His speed felt like teleportation. He crossed a distance of 10 miles in an instant, arriving where he left, Carices, in a few seconds, contrary to how long it took him to get there initially. The intense winds caused Carices to be blown backward, and she nearly fell off the rooftop the instant Gustav arrived. His feet made soft contact with the rooftop, causing her to shrink back even more with a fearful look. The immense power radiating from Gustav's figure at this point was causing the entire place to tremble, because so many abilities were currently computed inside this form he adopted. It's me, Gustav voiced out as he deactivated the combination. The pressure in the vicinity began to decrease as he transformed back into his human form. In a few seconds, he was back to looking normal. He had long dealt with the issue of clothes, so all his clothes were specially made to expand and decrease based on whatever size he took. If this wasn't so, he would have startled Carices with his naked body after returning to normal. You have caused a lot of trouble this night, Gustav voiced with an intense glare. Carices looked down and kept quiet. She had seen the news from this position, so she already knew what had happened to Boss Danzo. You're lucky it's not your fault, Gustav said as he snapped his finger. Plop! Different body parts, along with a decapitated head, appeared on the rooftop. The head rolled towards Carices' position. She made a loud shriek in fear as she saw the crushed head that was half its original size with brain matter and blood oozing out. The battered body parts looked like a person was nearly obliterated completely. Limbs and internal organs could be seen all over the place, with a visible chest hole on what was left of the torso. It painted the rooftop red as a nauseating smell spread across the place. This was what was left of the person making use of telepathy the other time. Gustav had blasted his body nearly to pieces with a punch, letting his body parts rain down on the city. However, while he dealt with the other one, he made the body parts disappear into his personal gravitational space even though they were thousands of feet away from him at the time. He couldn't perform such a feat normally, which showed just how powerful the form he took on earlier was. Chapter 705. He could only maintain that form for 15 seconds. Anything beyond that would lead to danger for him, since his energy points would be depleted. That's the person who controlled your mind. At least what's what left of them, Gustav voiced out while gesturing at the scattered body parts. Fear gripped Carice's heart as she realized just how brutal and merciless Gustav was. No one would be willing to commit such acts in Burning Sand City, since everything was being monitored from above. But not only did Gustav commit these acts in broad daylight, but he was also able to escape and not leave traces of himself behind. Although he didn't care about all those, the cops had currently arrived at the scene where he devastated those three. They were conducting investigations to find out exactly what happened because even the witnesses said they couldn't see anything. Gustav moved to the torso area of the body and squatted in front of it. Carice wondered what he was trying to do, and in the next moment, she saw him dig his fingers into the bloody neck area of the torso. Poochie, this was the last straw that broke the camel's back as she turned around and vomited out her stomach contents. She was trying to be strong before, but her weak stomach couldn't take it anymore. She wondered how Gustav was able to do such without even batting an eyelid. Bloodline acquisition has been activated. Searching for bloodline. Damaged bloodline found. Mental manipulation. Potency at 60% might not be compatible with host. This was the first time Gustav was getting such notifications. He guessed it had to do with the fact that the body parts were incomplete, and this body part nearly had any blood left within. Does host still wish to acquire this bloodline? Yes/no. Mental manipulation would have been a good bloodline at its normal state. Wouldn't it be a waste of time to go on with the acquisition process now that it's damaged? Gustav thought. This was his fault anyway. He wanted to deal with things as quickly as possible and get out of there, so he couldn't really blame anyone for this. Yes, Gustav voiced out. Bloodline acquisition process will now begin. Gustav was interested in knowing how it would turn out since the bloodline had something to do with mind control. Minutes later, Gustav and Carice were back in the penthouse. Carice sat on the sofa with a dejected look while Gustav stood in front of the massive window pane, staring at the city ahead. A loud silence reigned within the living room. Even though they had determined that Carice was mind-controlled and made to come out of the penthouse, she still blamed herself for the incident. Another pain that struck her heart was the fact that Marshall never showed up even though he was supposed to. Now Boss Danzo was in police custody, which meant he was already in the hands of the enemy since the Ring Lords practically controlled part of the city authorities from the shadows. Gustav's gaze was fixated on the city, but multiple thoughts were flowing through his mind. His brain was processing multiple ways to handle the situation like it was a computer, but he wasn't picking any method yet. He wanted to come up with the best solution where he'd be able to get Boss Danzo out of the situation without Boss Danzo suffering any consequences. Within Sir Zill's household, he had a worried look on his face as he stared at the holographic screen. He had just finished watching the news as well, so he knew what had happened. However, he was confused as to how Boss Danzo was caught in the first place. Didn't Gustav say he was keeping them in hiding? Why was he out in the open? He wondered. Besides this, another breaking news was broadcasted again. A footage displayed the blasts occurring atop the roof of a skyscraper opposite the scene where Boss Danzo had been caught. Showers of blood and body parts could be seen as well as the appearance of a massive hole on the side of the next building. As the person broadcasting the news voiced out, several pauses were made during the display of the footage. All that could be seen were two dark figures and a purplish blur. It would seem the culprit responsible for this incident was moving too fast for the high-speed cams to properly capture their face. The voice of the reporter rang out at the scene of the incident. It looked immensely brutal as there was blood all over, and the recovered body corpses had incomplete. This situation struck fear in the hearts of the citizens, even with the cops saying they would investigate and catch whoever was responsible. Several officers in MBO uniforms could be seen arriving on the scene at the same moment, where a police officer was reassuring the citizens. This is a mixed blood case. It has now been taken over by us. One of them voiced out with a strong tone. It was only after seeing the arrival of MBO officers that the citizens began to calm down a little. This was done by a powerful mixed blood. So everyone felt the MBO should be handling this instead of the police, who were clearly weaker. This happened minutes after I finished examining Gustav. Sir Zill began to piece things together. Seeing the state of the buildings where these incidents took place, he was a bit skeptical about whether Gustav was capable of causing such damage. But just as he was thinking, a call rang out. I'm sure you saw the news. The instant he picked it, he heard a familiar voice from the other end. I did. What's going on? How did he get caught? Sir Zil questioned. Carices was mind-controlled. He came out looking for her and was caught instead. That is truly unfortunate. Sir Zil felt sorry as he heard this explanation. The incident on the rooftop, was that you? He proceeded to ask. Yes, those were the people responsible. I had to deal with them. Chapter 706. The incident on the rooftop, was that you? He proceeded to ask. Yes, those were the people responsible. I had to deal with them. That's a lot of damage. Luckily, they can't trace the incident back to you. Sir Zil couldn't express just how shocked he was right now. It turned out Gustav was responsible for that, like he thought, even though he wasn't too sure. This level of strength wasn't supposed to be displayed by a 19-year-old mixed blood. How? This question kept ringing in his mind. The reason I called you is because I need your help with something. He heard Gustav speak again. Sure, if it is within my power, I will help. So what is it? Sir Zil asked. I need you to find out for me what Vanisher next plans are for Boss Danzo now that he has him in police custody. This is something I can do. I will contact him and give you feedback by tomorrow. How about that? Sir Zil stated. Fine by me. Thanks in advance. The call ended with this. Sir Zil could tell that Gustav probably needed this information to plan his next steps and save Boss Danzo. He only just needed to act like he was concerned about the welfare of the illegal underground battle arena and use that to draw information about their plans for Boss Danzo. He might not be as influential as the three Ring Lords, but he was still one of the most respected figures in the city, so Ring Lord Vanisher would not have any reason to put him on hold if he wanted to hold a meeting with him. After getting off the call with Sir Zil, Gustav turned to face Carices. This location is compromised. We're moving, he said before moving towards her. Where will we go? She asked. Anywhere but here, Gustav answered and grabbed her hand before pulling her towards the balcony area. Put this on. Gustav passed her dark shades and a scarf which she proceeded to wrap around her face. Leaping off the balcony area, Gustav blasted across the city with Carices in his grip. Even though Gustav had performed such acts before, she still hadn't gotten used to moving at such a high speed across the air. As the winds blew across her face, she felt nauseous. Minutes later, they arrived at a new hotel which seemed one step lower than the other one in terms of standards. Gustav never cared about things like this anyways. He lodged into the hotel using another identity with Carices. During their time there, some figures came snooping around the previous lodge, just as Gustav had expected. These two figures were able to infiltrate the penthouse, and they were dressed just like the three Gustav killed this night. No one's here, one of them voiced out. You saw his face, right? The other one asked. I did, but I only spotted it once. I could be wrong. The first one responded. Let's get back and make our report. Throughout the entire night, Gustav didn't get a wink of sleep. He had been meditating and recovering his energy after nearly spending all the previous night. Although it looked like daytime in the city, it was currently night. Only 2 days are left till the private aircraft arrives. I must get Boss Danzo out before we're out of time, Gustav decided. Carices was still cooked up in her room even when morning came due to the whole incident the previous night. Gustav later called her out to take breakfast. She ate in silence while Gustav prepared to go out. Do I need to tell you that you shouldn't step out? He asked. She shook her head in disagreement. Good, Gustav voiced out. Let me know the address of the Rel family, Gustav said with a glint in his eyes. Carices wondered why he would want to know that, but decided to pass the information along anyways. After getting the address, Gustav donned a red jacket and moved towards the balcony area. Carices could only hope that Gustav wouldn't wreak havoc. She didn't care about the rest of the Rel family, but she hoped for Marshall to not be harmed. Gustav traveled across the city with speed as he activated Sprint. The farther towards the north he traveled, the better and shorter the buildings became. He arrived at a residential area that looked like a rich neighborhood. This place was secluded from other areas and had private guards patrolling around. In a few more seconds of running and avoiding them all, he arrived at a massive residence that looked like the combination of 3 duplexes. It was gold and green in color, and a silver statue of a man holding a walking cane could be seen on the premises. This place was heavily guarded, and Gustav checked the surroundings to confirm that this was where he was headed. He paused his steps a few feet away from the gate. The guards in the vicinity stared at him with a suspicious look, and one of them approached him. Gustav was currently adopting a form with white hair and an oblong-shaped face. He looked more mature, but his body structure was pretty much the same. "I'm just doing my morning routine," Gustav voiced out with a smile. "This premises is off-limits. You can do it somewhere else," the guard stated. "All right, they'll be leaving," Gustav said with a smile. He proceeded to bring out a purplish glowing orb radiating with reddish electric-like arcs. The guards became alarmed the instant they saw that. A crazy pressure descended upon the vicinity as the light in the area reduced. They could feel immense energy coming from this orb. "What is that?" The one beside him shouted out and prepared for battle. The others in the area did the same and started moving over, seeing Gustav as a threat. "Calm down. Hear me out. Hear me out," Gustav chuckled as he voiced out like the guards were behaving ridiculous. Chapter 707. The guards wondered what this was all about, so they decided to hear him out. "This is a gift for the young master of the house, Marshall," Gustav stated. "A gift? Our young master doesn't collect gifts from anyone," the guard said with a strong tone of disapproval. "I'm not anyone. He knows me," Gustav responded. "Show proof of identity, or we cannot pass this along to young master." Just as they began arguing with Gustav, a hovercar could be seen heading out of the premises. It was a yellowish, sporty-looking hovercar. It looked really expensive. The gate opened up as the hovercar drove out and stopped beside the scene. "What is going on?" One of the glasses slid down as a young masculine voice was heard from within. "Young master." The guard saw Marshall in his school wares and greeted him. Marshall was currently headed to school since it was early in the morning, but he asked the driver to stop the car when he spotted the ruckus. "This fellow says he has a gift for you," the guards voiced out while gesturing at Gustav. Gustav suddenly turned around at this point with a smile on his face. "It's a gift from your beloved," he said while stretching out the orb in his hand. Marshall instantly froze the moment he saw this face. "Isn't this the culprit responsible for taking them both away?" he said internally, but as soon as this thought appeared, Gustav's face tweaked a bit. His nose became fatter and his chin wider, giving him a slightly different look, but he was still smiling. "It's from your beloved. You only need to hold on to it throughout today if you want to meet her," Gustav kept speaking. Seeing as there was no reaction from Marshall, the guards were about to drag Gustav away from the premises. "Leave him be," Marshall voiced out as he came down from the hover car. "She asked you to give this to me?" he questioned while reaching out to grab the head-sized orb. "SHHSSHH. If you wish to see her, you will hold on to this throughout today," Gustav said while speaking in a low tone, almost like he was whispering. Marshall had a myriad of expressions displayed on his face at the moment. It was a mixture of confusion, guilt, and happiness. He stared at the orb again before finally collecting it. His eyes shone awe as the reddish electric snakes circled round the dark purplish-colored orb. Although it was obvious that this orb contained immense energy, it also seemed to be well sealed. So Marshall didn't think much and moved back into the car. He felt there was no way caresses could harm him. "Thank you," he said with a grateful tone. "No, you thank you." Gustav was grinning mischievousness in his mind as he voiced out. "I hope she's okay. Yesterday Gustav interrupted him before he completed the statement. "Save your explanation for when you meet her. It's her you need to tell all that, not me," Gustav said before turning around to leave. "Thank you," Marshall shouted out once again as he watched Gustav leave the premises. The guards around wondered what all that was about, but they couldn't say a thing since Marshall allowed it. Not a word about what happened here to anyone. "You hear me?" he voiced out to the guards. "Yes, young master," they answered in unison. "Not even my mother or my father. If any of this gets out, all of you will lose your jobs," Marshall threatened before the window closed up, and the hovercar proceeded to zoom out of the premises. "Phase 1 complete," Gustav muttered as he transformed back into his original look before leaping across the air. Minutes later, Gustav arrived back in the penthouse and looked around. Energy signature exposure has been activated. A weird white light suddenly burst forth from Gustav's being surrounding the entire place. The whole penthouse was instantly dyed in white. The walls, sofas, tables, gadgets, every single thing. Greenish footsteps began to appear all around the place, and from the looks of things, it came from the balcony area. A red footprint also appeared and a red palm print on one side of the wall, as well as the doors within the penthouse. As expected, Gustav muttered as he deactivated the ability. The ability he had just used happened to be from Sahil's bloodline. Sahil's bloodline was actually a very good supportive one that dealt with every form of energy, and since everyone exuded a kind of signature energy, this ability helped in investigative situations. For them to easily get into this place, they must at least be Falcon ranked, Gustav analyzed. The trio he had dealt with the other day also happened to be Falcon ranked mixed bloods, just like him. He was only able to defeat them so easily and quickly due to the combination he used. On a normal day, he wouldn't even want to try combining all those transformations. Just as Gustav was making an analysis, he got a call from Sir Zil. I have the information you want. Can you come over to my lab? Sure, but I won't be staying for too long, Gustav responded and ended the communication. He was already used to taking the balcony, so he ignored the normal exit and leaped out of the building. The craziest part was this building was at least 6,000 feet high up in the air to the point that the clouds gathered around it. Some were even beneath, and he could look down on them from above, which proved just how high up this was. Yet Gustav leaped from the top of such a building onto the next one which was like 3 streets away. Gustav could drop straight down from the top of the building without making use of hover before he arrived at the bottom, but it would cause destruction. The shockwaves from his drop were bound to destroy a few things in sight. Knowing this, he played things safe and always made use of hover before he landed on the ground. Bam! I'm here. Chapter 708. Knowing this, he played things safe and always made use of hover before he landed on the ground. Bam! I'm here, Gustav voiced out through a communication device as he landed in front of Grayscale Pharmaceuticals. I'm in the lab, Sir Zil responded from the other side. Gustav proceeded to walk into the place without wasting time. The workers in the vicinity didn't stop him as he made his way to the executive elevator area. In about 2 minutes, he arrived in front of Sir Zil's office and moved towards the side of the wall where the entrance to his personal lab was situated. The wall parted ways, and he walked in to find Sir Zil working on some chemical compounds placed in different containers on a lab table. You're here, Sir Zil voiced out as he pulled off the red glass on his face, which he was making use of to analyze these chemical compounds. What do you have for me? Gustav asked as he walked in. I spoke to Ring Lord Vanisher. Sir Zil began speaking as he dropped the equipment in his grasp. He turned around to face Gustav before continuing. They planned to offer him a deal to come back and resume fighting in the underground arena, forever, or suffer the charges for murder and kidnapping of an underage female, which would most likely lead to life imprisonment, Sir Zil voiced out. Resume fighting forever? Gustav scoffed. Both options lack free will. As expected from a bunch of inhumane douchebags, he added with a tone of annoyance. But there's something else, Sir Zil suddenly voiced out. Gustav had an expression of intrigue as he heard that. They want to know who you are. So their first demand would be for him to tell them everything he knows about you and where they can find Carissa's, Sir Zil revealed. Looks like they're hell-bent on having revenge for what happened during the last battle. Gustav sensed that they bore a grudge. After all, he made them lose a lot. The event ended earlier than it was supposed to. They were having a lot of complaints from millions of viewers all across the world and also receiving threats from them due to matches that didn't hold, causing people to waste money on betting. The underground battle facility was nearly obliterated, and they lost the tunnelways, which cost a fortune to construct in the first place. Thinking about it now, Gustav understood that they had a lot of reasons to bear a grudge after that huge loss. What will happen if he chooses to refrain from telling them anything about me? Gustav asked. He only said, they'd have to use force to get the information out of him, Sir Zil stated. What kind of force? Gustav asked as his eyes squinted in suspiciousness. The lethal type. Bam, 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 bam. Blurg. Within a secluded and enclosed space, the sounds of fists colliding with flesh rang out multiple times. Strapped to a chair, a middle-aged man who gave off a stout feeling was being beaten up by a group of men dressed in skin-tight yellow outfits. This was the dressing of interrogators in the police force within Burning Sand City. Tell us, Danzo, where's the girl? How did she suddenly disappear off the rooftop? One of them, with a long ponytail and slanted-looking eyes, asked while squatting in front of the man. How do you expect me to know where the girl is? I am here, and they are wherever they are. Do you think anyone is so stupid as to remain in a place after almost getting caught? Boss Danzo blurted out before spitting blood from his mouth. The other two in the enclosed space were about to move closer and attack again when the man stopped them with a hand sign. Then tell us who this ally of yours is that helped you two get escaped the other time. The man voiced out. It was just a good Samaritan. I don't know who he is. Boss Danzo responded. Cut the crap. A good Samaritan, my arse. Reveal who he is now before you lose more blood. The slanted eyes man with the ponytail voiced out with a threatening glare. He must be Santa. He came bearing Christmas gifts early. Boss Danzo chuckled in response. Bam. The man threw a punch straight at Boss Danzo's face, causing a tooth to fly out of his mouth. Blood drizzled from his mouth as his face fell to the side. Don't mess with me. Bam, 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 bam. Not minding that he was dealing with a normal middle-aged-looking man, the interrogator with a ponytail kept punching Boss Danzo in his face and gut, causing him to bleed more. He then brought out some glowing pegs sparking with blue light. Tearing Boss Danzo's shirt off, he proceeded to clip the pegs to different parts of his body. His nipples, gut area, close to his neck, both arms, and even his back. The interrogator picked up a controller and tapped a button. ZZZHRRHHHHHLL. Multiple volts of electricity were instantly released into Boss Danzo's body, causing him to vibrate in pain. ZZZHHRRHHHHLL. He kept vibrating violently as the pegs were activated for many seconds. Sir Borscht, you'll kill him. One of them voiced out from the side. This is not nearly enough to kill the great Mr. Eldorado, the interrogator said with a chuckle before tapping the controller and turning it up. ZZHHHHRRHHHHH. Boss Danzo began trembling even more violently as the voltage increased. His skin was already getting cooked up, and scorch marks appeared around the parts of his body where the pegs were placed. After a few more seconds, the interrogator deactivated the pegs and moved closer to Boss Danzo again. At this point, Boss Danzo was seated with an almost lifeless look as his eyes twitched repeatedly. Smoke drifted from the top of his head, signifying just how intense the electrocution session was. Do you have something to tell me now? Borscht voiced out with a threatening glare as he squatted in front of Boss Danzo once again. Boss Danzo remained silent for some time. His bloodshot eyes also proved that the electrocution was no small thing. Who is your ally? Borscht asked once again. Core. Boss Danzo coughed painfully for some time before speaking. Company. Come closer. I see. Can't speak loud. Boss Danzo said weakly. Borscht could barely hear what Boss Danzo said, but he read his lips and understood. In response, he moved his face closer to Boss Danzo's. The person is... As Boss Danzo spoke weakly, Borscht's curiosity increased, and he moved further closer. Suddenly, Boss Danzo's weak look transformed into a devious one as he pushed his face forward while opening his mouth fiercely. Calm. A roar. A scream of pain resounded within the enclosed space as Boss Danzo's teeth pierced into Borscht's nose. Boss Danzo clenched his teeth together with intense force and pulled his head backward. Borscht's entire nose was torn off his face gruesomely, causing blood to spill out in all directions. Boss Danzo spat the disgusting piece of flesh to the side after ripping the nose off with his teeth. He proceeded to raise his head up and stared at the other two interrogators in the room with a gentle gaze like he didn't just finish performing a gruesome act. Borscht fell to the ground, writhing in pain as he tried covering his face, but the blood kept spilling out non-stop. My nose. Eric, you bastard old man. They'll kill you. He shouted out in pain, losing his composure as an interrogator. Sir Borscht, The other two shouted in unison as they helped him up. Borscht tried to run towards Boss Danzo, but the two held him back and pulled him out of the room so he could get treatment. Within another room, a holographic image showed Boss Danzo sitting in place with blood-stained teeth. Interesting. I really don't want to lose such a precious fighter, but I want information gotten out of him latest by tomorrow. A man dressed in a black business suit voiced out as he stared at the projection. Yes, Sir Vanisher. Two other men in suits as well voiced out from behind with respectful gazes. Bring in a better interrogator. Let them do whatever it takes to get the information out of him. The ring lords will not take this loss lying down. Vanisher voiced out with a smirk before suddenly vanishing from his standpoint. Atop the rooftop of a skyscraper around the west side of the city, Gustav recalled Sir Zill's statement. Don't act stupid. If you suddenly reveal yourself, they could link everything to you. I want logic over emotions, but if they touch a strand of hair on his head, I won't care about logic anymore. I will raise this city to the ground if I have to, Gustav thought with an intense glare as he stared at the gate of the city's high school up ahead. Time to put Phase 3 into action, he muttered. Chapter 709. I want logic over emotions, but if they touch a strand of hair on his head, I won't care about logic anymore. I will raise this city to the ground if I have to, Gustav thought with an intense glare as he stared at the gate of the city's high school up ahead. Time to put Phase 3 into action, he muttered. The sign above the school gate of the high school read, Burning Sands High. This was the city high school, and a lot of kids from influential households attended this school. This happened to be the same school Damien and Marshall attended, but they were in different classes. Damien's little sister, Siri, also attended this school as well. While Gustav was standing atop the roof, school ended for the day. From his position atop the roof of the building a few hundred feet away, he could hear the loud chattering of students. Gustav leaped down from the rooftop and began walking towards the school gate. The security stopped him as he arrived in front, questioning his reason for his visit. Gustav told them he was here for Damien and even showed them a tag from Grayscale Pharmaceuticals as proof. They respectfully let him in, knowing that not just anyone could work at Grayscale Pharmaceuticals. Doesn't he look a bit familiar? No, I don't think I've seen him before. The guards at the entrance spoke amongst themselves after Gustav had gotten in. I can sense the energy from my orb, Gustav said internally as he traced the orb he passed to Marshall in the morning. He walked on the massive school grounds in the direction where he could sense the energy of his orb. The school was just as well constructed as Echelon High. Gustav could see similarities like several football pitches, other sports centers, library structures, and so on. The school grounds were massive. He would get lost if he wasn't tracing the direction in which his orb was located. Gustav came into contact with a few school students who stared at him with looks of curiosity. Gustav always did attract a lot of attention, and in this case, his face was unfamiliar, so it was way worse. Students dressed in colorful blue and white school uniforms moved around the premises, most of them looking extravagant. He finally arrived at the block area where Class 3 was located. He stared at one of the 5-story buildings on the left and could sense that his orb was on the last floor. God Eyes has been activated. His eyesight zoomed into the building as he focused it on a particular spot on the last floor. In one of the classes, a boy with a mixture of blonde and black hair sat on his desk with a dark purplish glowing orb on his table. 2 male students stood around him, and they seemed to be engaged in a conversation. Gustav retracted his sight and was about to move forward when he heard a familiar voice call out to him. Big Brother Gustav. Gustav turned to the side and spotted Damien headed for him. Now is not the time, Damien. I'm busy with something, Gustav voiced out in preparation to leave. The other students in the vicinity turned to stare at him at this point. Did Damien just say Gustav? Could he be the one? Most of them voiced out questions similar to this. Oh, what are you doing here anyways? Damien asked as he arrived in front of him. Something confidential. Shouldn't you be headed home? Gustav asked as he proceeded to start moving forward. I would, but I have a mixed-blood football match with some dweebs from Class B, Damien voiced out. I was just about to go call them out now since they haven't stepped out of their class. Damien's confident tone rang out as he stepped forward. Cool, enjoy your game then, Gustav said as he continued walking forward. They both arrived in front of the building and proceeded to walk in. "You're headed this way as well?" Damien asked. "It would seem so." Gustav initially thought Damien was still following him, but it looked like Damien was headed for one of the classes up. They took an elevator up, and Gustav decided to stop on the 4th floor. "See you later, big brother Gustav," Damien shouted out as Gustav left the elevator. "Looks like he's headed to the 5th floor as well," Gustav muttered as he walked along the corridor of the 4th floor. He approached the bathroom, and he activated his storage device. An average-sized blue gown could be seen projecting from the top of the storage device. "They'll lure him with this," Gustav thought as he headed into the bathroom. Meanwhile, Damien arrived at the last floor and got into the same class Gustav was checking out earlier. "Having cold feet?" Damien shouted out the moment he got into the class. Chatter, chatter, chatter. The place instantly turned noisy as Damien walked in. "It's Damien. Did he come to cause trouble again?" Whispers could be heard in the background from other students. "Humpfu said we are having cold feet. We might just have to postpone today's match for personal reasons," one of the students standing beside Marshall voiced out. "Oh, that sounds to me like chickening out," Damien scoffed after saying. "Just because you guys are Class A doesn't mean we're scared of you. Tone your ego down," the other male student standing beside Marshall voiced out as well. Aye. "They'll be sure to tell everyone Class B were to show up to the match," Damien said and turned around to leave. The others in the vicinity kept staring at Marshall, waiting for him to speak. Meanwhile, Marshall kept staring at the orb he placed on his desk. "Can we reschedule the match for another day?" Marshall finally spoke while standing. Damien paused his footsteps before he got to the door and slowly turned around. "Oh, the great Marshall is also scared of sticking to plans?" Damien said with a smirk. Chapter 7:10. "No, it's due to personal reasons. I'm supposed to meet someone today," Marshall stated. "Sounds to me like excuses. They'll be sure to tell everyone you guys chickened up," Damien said and turned around again to open the glass door. Marshall gritted his teeth at this point and stared at Damien as he slowly walked through the entrance. "Stop," Marshall shouted out. "Well play." A grin appeared on Damien's face as he heard that and turned around. "This will be our last competition together, and after winning this, Class A would have finally crushed Class B in every sport known to man," Damien stated while turning to the side. "So cocky. Now I remember why I don't like him. His confidence makes him hot, though." The male and female students in the class all mumbled out their opinions after hearing this. "Remember, if we win this one, Class A must have a rematch in other sport competitions with us," Marshall stated. Sure, but there's no point in reminding me since you lots will be losing," Damien smiled after voicing out. "Let's go," he added before walking out of the class. The other two beside Marshall stared at him, waiting for his action. Gustav came out of the bathroom minutes later, but this was no longer Gustav. He was taking the form of Carissa's. Carissa's mean eyes and long black hair, along with her short 53 frame, were all copied. Gustav was wearing a blue gown at the moment with a light shade of makeup on the face he had adopted. "That took longer than I expected," he said internally as he walked towards the stairway. It turned out it wasn't easy dressing as a girl. It was not his first time trying it, but since it wasn't something he did often, it still took him time to complete the dressing. Gustav arrived at the stairway and headed to the class, where he could sense the energy of his orb coming from. In a few seconds, he arrived in front of the entrance to the class, which had 3B placed right above in bold format. Walking into the class, he gathered attention from the few students left as they stared at the beautiful yet familiar feminine figure that had just shown up. "Hey, isn't that?" one of them voiced out as they recognized the face. "Wasn't she supposed to be abducted? What is she doing here?" Gustav ignored all their looks of confusion and astonishment as he walked forward while squinting his eyes. Luckily, there are only 4 of them in the class at the moment. 3 girls and a boy. "Why is it with you?" he voiced out as he arrived in front of one girl, sitting in the middle of the 3rd row. The blue-haired girl voiced out with confusion. She followed Carissa's line of sight and noticed she was staring at the purplish glowing orb sparking with red electric arcs. "Marshall asked me to hold this," she explained. "Where is he?" Gustav asked with a tone of urgency. There's a mixed-blood football match between Class A and B in the third sports center, she responded. Gustav then recalled Damien mentioning something about a football match and instantly linked them. It's the same match. He nearly face-bombed as he figured this out. He wished he had stopped Damien then, as this would make things more difficult for him. Where is the third sports center? Gustav asked. She proceeded to explain how Gustav would get there, and he turned around the instant she was done. By the way, aren't you supposed to be missing? Should we call the cops? 2 of the 4 in the class voiced out with tones of concern. Mind your business, Gustav voiced out as he walked out of the class. The girl holding onto the orb gasped as it flew out of her hand, through the window by the side, following after Gustav, who was walking through the corridor. What is going on? I have to make sure I am not spotted by a lot of people. Gustav walked quickly across the school premises, following the paths that were directed to him by the girl earlier. His plans had been based on meeting Marshall in class. He didn't expect that he would have to leave the building while still maintaining Carissa's form. Based on his initial plan, he was supposed to lure Marshall to somewhere secluded while transforming into Carissa's. Now he had to go meet Marshall wherever he was, which garnered more risks of being seen by a lot of people who would most likely call the cops. Gustav knew he couldn't waste time, so he activated Dash, moving even faster than before as he headed for the third sports center. Meanwhile, the match had started between the 2 classes on a massive football pitch. Other students had gathered to watch, including a few teachers, one of which was acting as the referee. Young Master asked to pick him up late today. Within a hovercar, dashing through the school entrance, the driver voiced out. Didn't he mention something about a match today? I want to be in attendance. A blonde-haired woman sitting at the back of the hovercar voiced out. Yes, ma'am. The driver responded respectfully. This hovercar was escorted by 3 black ones in which there were mixed blood guards. Ask the students for direction. He said the third sports center. The woman voiced out with a commanding tone. In a few minutes, Gustav arrived at the third sports center and could hear the sounds of blasts. These weren't actual blasts. Instead, they were the sounds of the ball being kicked. Since it was mixed bloods playing such a match, it sounds like this were expected since they were more powerful than normal humans or Slarkovs. Gustav moved in and could see a large number of students gathered around. Some of them spotted him, and some did not. There was a barrier surrounding the spectator area to prevent the ball from injuring anyone, so Gustav began looking for a way to bypass that and find his way to the pitch. Chapter 7:11. There was a barrier surrounding the spectator area to prevent the ball from injuring anyone, so Gustav began looking for a way to bypass that and find his way to the pitch. At the same moment Gustav was looking for a way to enter, Marshall's mother had arrived on the scene with many guards following her. The students in the vicinity all stared with looks of awe as she made her way into the premises. She was drawing a lot of attention to herself, and most of them recognized her to be the madam of the House of Rel. Some of the teachers, on spotting her, came over to welcome her. She was a huge donator, so she was respected by all of the staff, which was also one of the reasons why Marshall got special treatment in school, and other students did not like to mess with him. However, Damien was different since he was also from an affluent family. Sir Zil was the head of the Jimine family, which was known as the family of great scientists. Sir Zil was one of the greatest scientists not just in the city but in different fields of science all across the world. His children were also well-known scientists but mostly versed in different cities, just like Damien's father, who was never around because he was based in a different city. As Mrs. Trisrell found a place to sit, the students in the vicinity dispersed from that area while her guards were stationed behind and around her. They distanced themselves well enough so as not to obstruct her view. At the moment, Marshall could be seen with the ball. Another student whose legs were covered in lizard-like scales came running over with speed, but Marshall's body glowed with a greenish aura as he jumped upwards and somersaulted several feet with the balls lodged in between his legs. Landing in front, he began kicking the ball forward and dodging other players, as well using his bloodline ability. Damien suddenly came running over from the other side. Phantom charge, he voiced out as he suddenly split into multiple persons. Marshall became confused as he tried dodging the multiple Damiens in front of him while joggling the ball forward. They were becoming too many for him to handle, so he kicked the ball upwards, trying to pass to another teammate up ahead. 3 Damians grabbed the original Damian and slingshot him upwards. Doing a flip in the air, Damian kicked the ball in the opposite direction. Bang! It traveled swiftly across the air towards the opponent's area. Try, a teammate who had been waiting for this shot charged forward as rocket-like igniters shot out from his leg. Another opponent was moving towards him in a bid to tackle, but he was faster. The moment the ball landed on the pitch, he swung his engine, igniting his leg forward with force. Boom! It sounded like a distant explosion as the ball traveled forward with speed, slammed into the keeper, and sent him flying into the goalpost along with the ball. Cheers! 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 Loud cheers could be heard coming from the spectator area after the second goal. It had only been around 10 minutes since the game started, and Class A was already dominating Class B with 2-0. Damian had scored the first goal, and now he assisted with the second. Mixed-blood football matches were intense due to the fact that mixed bloods could use their abilities at will. Anyone could get seriously injured if they were normal people trying to participate. As the match resumed, Damian smiled at Marshall's frustrated look. "Told you, y'all were gonna lose," he voiced out. "The match isn't over yet," Marshall responded with a fierce glare. Marshall's mother watched from her sitting position with a scornful look. "Malta," she voiced out. One of the guards with a face full of red tattoos walked up to her as he heard his name. "It would be disgraceful of my son to lose this match. Do something," she said in a nearly whispering voice. "Ma'am, the opposing side has Sir Zill's grandson, Damien, on their team. Are you sure you want me to mess with him?" he asked. "Don't be stupid. I'm not asking you to kill anyone. Just work something out. My son's team has to come out on top," she voiced out with nearly a snarl. "As you wish, ma'am," Malta stated before turning around to move forward. He reached down further the path in the middle of the spectator seat and stared at the pitch with a more intense look. His eyes focused on the ball as it was being passed around. Meanwhile, Gustav was somewhere around the east side of the pitch. He still hadn't found a way to get through the force field placed around the pitch to prevent accidents. He had moved around and couldn't find any openings, so now, his next plan was to get Marshall's attention. This was also proving difficult since Marshall was so frustrated about the losing match that he didn't even look anywhere else. Even though it was difficult, it wasn't impossible for Gustav. He just wanted to make sure that he wouldn't attract anyone else's attention when trying to do this. Gustav tried calling out to him, changing the pitch of his voice with his shape-shifting ability and allowing it to be louder, but the barrier proved effective, and he wasn't able to get his attention. He tried using light frame refraction to reflect light onto Marshall's face and cause him to stare in this direction, but even though this managed to penetrate the barrier, the rays of light spread out instead of converging to one point. Gustav tried different methods, but all were coming up with one fault or the other. Just when he was about to try another method, he recalled something that might work. "I didn't even try to use it earlier. This is an opportunity to put it into practice," Gustav thought as he closed his eyes. Chapter 7:12. Mental Manipulation Bloodline has been activated. Blue lines appeared in Gustav's eyes the moment he opened them. He could hear a slight static noise in his head and occasionally scattered voices. It was hard to make out the words since the voices were very scattered. "Looks like it's truly damaged, just as the system pointed out," Gustav thought. However, this wouldn't stop him from trying out what he wanted to do. He stared at Marshall, who was running across the field, trying to tackle the person with the ball. "Stop," Gustav said in his mind, but Marshall kept running. He tried increasing his focus and maintaining his gaze on Marshall. "Don't move," he said in his mind once again, but nothing happened. "Stay right there," Gustav kept trying but was still being met with the same result. At this point, he realized he might never be able to control anyone's mind with this bloodline since it was damaged. Originally, a mental-type bloodline would suit Gustav since his mental capabilities were high, but this one just happened to be defective. Just as Gustav was thinking of deactivating it, a thought appeared in his mind. "I'll try this instead," he decided. He focused on Marshall once again. At this point, Marshall was with the ball moving forward and trying to score when suddenly he heard a voice in his head. "Marshall, look over here." The sudden masculine voice caused him to stop in his tracks with an expression of confusion on his face. Huh. He voiced out while looking around. The ball was suddenly tackled from him, due to this causing his other teammates to display disgruntled looks. What is wrong with you? One of them voiced while running past him to go tackle the person who had just gotten the ball. Marshall shook his head and turned around to go after them as well. Malta, who was watching from another angle, cursed lightly under his breath. Too bad he lost the ball. I would have to wait till it's in his possession again, he said as his left eye emitted a red glow. Or I could mess it up for the opposing team before they score another goal. The madam wouldn't let me hear the end of it if her son loses, Malta thought as he followed the ball with his eyes. I think it worked just now. Let me try it again, Gustav thought, and proceeded to stare at Marshall again. Marshall, look here, he said internally while staring at Marshall. Marshall paused his footsteps again as he heard that and looked around with confusion. I must be out of my mind or something. Why am I hearing voices? Marshall wondered. Marshall, look over here. He heard the masculine voice again. Your left, you idiot, the voice cussed. Marshall stared at his right as he heard that. Your other left. 8 o'clock. Gustav had to give an accurate description of where to look. Marshall turned around, looking for where his 8 o'clock was, and finally spotted the beautiful feminine figure right outside the barrier surrounding the pitch. His eyes widened in surprise as he saw Carices standing there staring in his direction. I can't believe it. He totally forgot that it was a masculine voice in his head earlier and ran towards her. The players were having a heated, tackling moment over on the west side of the field, so they didn't notice Marshall's actions at first. What are you doing here? He voiced out with a shocked expression the moment he arrived in front of the barrier. Get over here, Carices voiced out while placing her hand on the barrier. I'm in the middle of a game, he shouted loudly so she could hear him on the other side. I don't have time and I can't be seen. Get over here now, Carices voiced out once again. Marshall instantly lost reasoning and nodded before turning around. Oh boy, what am I seeing? Malta muttered with a look of interest as he spotted Carices' figure. He was initially looking for Marshall after not seeing him on the pitch, trying to tackle the ball away like the others. Then he spotted both of them speaking to each other by the side. Jackpot. They'll have to report this to Madam right away. I'm sure this is more important than the game. While muttering these words underneath his breath, Marshall turned around and began heading towards Mrs. Trisrell's seating position. Meanwhile, Marshall was currently speaking with the referee, telling him to deactivate the barrier so he could leave. You can't leave in the middle of a game, the referee stated with a look of disapproval. It's an emergency, Marshall voiced out. It is against the rules. You have to complete the match, the referee said, refusing to budge. Let me out now, or you will regret it. Marshall wasn't used to threatening others, so his gaze was a little shaky as he voiced out. But he was determined to get out of here and meet his beloved. Just as the referee was about to speak again, a loud feminine voice was heard. Get that vermin. Everyone turned to stare in the direction where it came from and saw that it was Mrs. Trisrell. The guards around her could be seen charging in a particular direction which everyone once again focused on, and noticed a girl in a blue gown standing close to the pitch on the east side. Mom? It was at this moment that Marshall knew his mom was present. That means... He turned towards the side and noticed they were all headed in Carices' direction as they activated their bloodlines. Carices, run! Marshall screamed out. Gasp! Isn't that the abducted maid? It was at this moment that everyone properly noticed Carices. Contrary to everyone's expectations, she placed her hand on the barrier. Krrrryyhhhh, cracks began to appear all over the barrier, and all of a sudden, boom! The barrier shattered like glass, and she charged forward. Let's go! The moment Gustav grabbed hold of Marshall, he dashed forward. Whoosh! Chapter 7:13. Let's go! The moment Gustav grabbed hold of Marshall, he dashed forward. Whoosh! The guards in the vicinity were astonished as they saw the speed at which Carices moved while dragging Marshall along with her. They quickly attacked before Carices could get away, but all their attacks were dodged with ease as Carices blurred out of the sports center. Stop! There are kids here, one of the teachers shouted out as most of the attacks slammed into the football pitch, destroying several parts and leaving craters in it. The students playing the match had been scared stiff, and some of them even fell to their knees. Luckily, none of the blasts touched anyone since the teacher, who had a sound bloodline, could get his voice echoing across the place. The guards attacking paused their attacks to stop themselves from hitting one of the kids by mistake. All the guards were very powerful, so just a single attack could send any of these kids to the afterlife, even though they were mixed bloods too. She took my son away. Go after her right now. Mrs. Trisrell screamed out like a depraved lunatic. The 6 guards nodded and charged out of the sports center to give chase. Mrs. Trisrell proceeded to make a call at that instant. Carices is here. Send stronger forces now. Meanwhile, Carices sped towards the closest class block in the area with Marshall, who was just as surprised to see her performing such a feat. Gustav felt like facepalming right now. This was the situation he was trying to avoid by doing things in a subtle way. He could have destroyed the barrier with his strength from the onset, but he didn't want to be seen. Now that he had no other option than to grab Marshall and get out of sight. He initially didn't spot the madam of the Rell household until she screamed out for her guards to give a chase. How did they even spot me? Gustav wondered, since he was practically on their blind spot with where he was situated. He had no idea that he was only spotted because of the corrupt nature of Mrs. Trisrell, who wanted to rig the match in her son's favor. Boom! A blast of wind instantly blasted the tree by his right to smithereens, causing Gustav to be wary. He turned to the side and could see a guard riding on a tornado-like wind, moving forward with speed. He was amongst the 2 who were able to give a proper chase as Gustav ran across the school grounds. Exploding wind. The guard pointed his finger in Gustav's direction as he voiced out. Gustav suddenly felt the rupturing of air around him and swerved towards the side as he kept running. Thuwum, a burst of wind blasted forth from the side, sending everything in the vicinity flying due to the amount of force it emitted. Some students in the vicinity were sent flying even though they were several 10 feet away. Gustav had already run past the range of effect, so he was unaffected. The other guard, who was also managing to keep up, shot a yellow blast towards Gustav, which he managed to dodge as well. How are you doing this? Marshall voiced out as he found himself unable to keep up. He knew these guards well, so he knew just how powerful they were. Compared to how Carices had a weak bloodline, these guards were really strong and could even be said to be amongst the strongest mixed bloods in the city. His family was rich enough to afford them. You will find out later, Gustav stated in Carices' voice as he kept charging forward. He finally spotted a class block up ahead and leaped upwards while carrying Marshall. Bang! Both of them blasted through the window on the last floor. The attack stopped the instant both of them got into one of the buildings. The 2 guards giving chase could not send their attacks hurling towards the building. Even though they had toned down the strength of their attacks to prevent harming the students, it would still be powerful enough to topple the building if they attacked, which would harm the young master of the Rell family. Gustav began tapping on the device strapped to his left wrist while running along the corridors with Marshall. Now that the attacks had stopped for a brief period, he had the chance to set coordinates with his dimensional bracelet. The guards riding on the mini tornado flew straight towards the window Gustav blasted through. The circulating winds around him widened the gap even more as he arrived in the corridor and shrunk the mini tornado even more. Fyi, he spotted Carices up ahead, who stopped to set the coordinates. But at this time, Gustav was already done with that, so he grabbed hold of Marshall again and dashed across the corridor. The guard gave chase while he sped along and made a turn towards the left. Where are we going? Marshall asked, getting speed sick with the way Gustav was yanking him around. We'll be out of here soon, Gustav responded and dashed into one of the bathrooms. The guard arrived in front of the bathroom as well a few seconds later and blasted through the entrance. Gustav was counting down as he stayed in one of the cubicles with Marshall. Marshall's breathing had turned hurried at this point as his face planted into Carices' boobs. His face turned reddish. Gustav didn't even notice this. Instead, he stared at his dimensional bracelet and smiled. Bang! The guard blasted the walls of the cubicle apart. Got you. Just as he voiced out, a bright light was emitted from both Gustav's and Marshall's figure. The last thing the guard saw as he charged forward to grab Gustav was the evil smirk on Carices' face and an outstretched middle finger. No. he shouted out as his hand phased through particles of light. Zing, Gustav and Marshall had disappeared. Don't forget to check out my new story, Advent of the Depraved Battle Mage. Add it to your library, vote, comment, and write reviews if you can. Arigato. Chapter 7:14. Evening time arrived, and the cops issued a citywide search for Marshall and Carices. Other private forces were also looking for them. It was impossible for them to say Marshall had been kidnapped because footage showed Marshall and Carices speaking to each other on the football pitch. This proved that they were acquainted with each other, especially with the way Marshall was smiling. The referee also stated that Marshall asked for the barrier to be taken down to leave. This made it obvious that he wanted to go with her. Carices was also a minor, so it was impossible to place charges on her being a kidnapper. However, the parents still had every right to send search parties after their child, as well as Carices, who was also their ward. This incident made headlines as different media outlets showcased it with headings like, "Starstruck lovers from the Rell family, Marshall and Carices elope together. Young couple from the Rell family escape from the clutches of their disagreeing family." These headings mostly suggested that Marshall and Carices' relationship was not allowed by the family, which increased the bad reputation the Rell family already had. They were already known for looking down on others with a less renowned background, so this just put them in a more of a salty situation. Social media was being flooded with people bashing them and making jokes about how they were so bad that even their own son had to run away. Of course, they ignored all of this. The whole social media banter would not decrease the fact that they were still amongst the most powerful families in the city. Within the Rell household, the head of the family and his wife sat in the massive, luxurious-looking living room with many people. "Find my son," he voiced out. "The problem now is we don't know who is involved in the shadows. Carices could not do that before, so there must be someone else who planned this," one of Marshall's uncles voiced out. "It could be the person who helped them escape during the last battle event 1 month back," another one of the family members voiced out. "The cops came out to say that person doesn't exist. So how?" Mrs. Tris Rell voiced out. "A fake identity, huh?" Just as the head of the family muttered, a guard came running into the living room. "Sir, ma'am, there's an urgent call for you both," he voiced out as he arrived in their midst. Everyone knew that for a guard to rush in here in the middle of the main family meeting, the situation had to truly be urgent. The guard brought out a device and tapped on it, displaying a massive holographic monitor. Truant, the instant it came on, every member in the living room opened their mouths wide. In a dimly lit space, Marshall was strapped to a chair with restraints, and a dark purplish glowing orb was floating right in front of him. What is going on? They all wondered as they stared at the holographic video call. Then a figure popped out from the side and stood on Marshall's left. Their eyes widened even more as they recognized this face to be the same person said to get Mr. Eldorado and Carices out of the underground battle facility. Currently, Gustav had taken the form of the identity he used in breaking Boss Danzo and Carices out. "You. Who are you, and what do you want?" Marshall's father asked with a strong tone rising anger. "Who I am isn't important," Gustav answered from the other end with a deep voice. He walked forward, appearing larger on the holographic screen. "I have your son. That should be your biggest concern," Gustav added with an intense glare as he scanned everyone in the room watching. "I will advise you to turn yourself in and release my son, if not the consequences will be huge for you," Mrs. Tris Rell voiced out with a threatening tone. "The next threat will cost your son his left hand," Gustav voiced out with a cold tone. "How dare?" Mrs. Tris was about to speak again when the head of the family cut her short. "What do you want?" Marshall's father proceeded to ask. "Piltria." She yelled out the name of her husband, indirectly telling him not to give in. "Quiet, let me handle this," he voiced out with a commanding tone. Mrs. Tris Rell had no choice but to keep quiet at this point. "Drop your charges on Mr. Eldorado. Withdraw the forces searching for Carices and never try to harm her again," Gustav voiced out his demands. "Just this? You don't want money?" Marshall's father asked. "I don't need your money," Gustav stated. "Why don't you just—" Before Marshall's father could complete his statement, Gustav interrupted. "Do as I have said, or you won't even be able to bury your son, since his remains would be obliterated, Gustav said while touching the orb floating in front of Marshall. He rubbed it with a smile on his face. You can ask Geru and Biden what this is. They are guards in the underground battle facility, so I'm sure they can give a good testimony, Gustav voiced out before staring at them once more and ending the call. Thaish, the holographic projection disappeared, and the room sunk into silence for a few moments. Piltria, you shouldn't have negotiated with him. You should have threatened him more, Marshall's mother voiced out. You want to hasten your son's death? Marshall's father asked with a glare. Anyone would fold after getting properly threatened. Knowing how powerful our family is, she argued with a disagreeing tone. You think he didn't know how powerful our family was before he decided to abduct our son? Marshall's father chuckled with annoyance as he voiced out. There's... Quiet, woman. Did you see those eyes? Those eyes are the eyes of a cold and merciless killer who has ended the lives of many, Marshall's father said with a tone of annoyance and wariness. Only a stupid person would call the bluff off someone like that. Chapter 7:15. Quiet, woman. Did you see those eyes? Those eyes are the eyes of a cold and merciless killer who has ended the lives of many, Marshall's father said with a tone of annoyance and wariness. Only a stupid person would call the bluff off someone like that, Marshall's father added with a sigh. Even though Gustav was using a different identity, nothing could hide the eyes of a killer from him. There was no bluff to be called because Gustav would truly do as he had said. They called in experts immediately to try tracing the call. It would have been easier to do that if they were expecting such a call at first, but the whole situation came as a surprise to them. They didn't know Marshall was abducted since he willingly went with Carissa's, so they weren't expecting a call from anyone making demands. Unfortunately, they were unable to trace the call no matter how much they tried. From his own end, Gustav had done the necessary requirements to make sure the call couldn't be traced. The head of the family began to think about Gustav's demands and how he could fulfill them. He remembered the floating purplish orb in front of his son during the video and investigated what it was. Since Gustav had mentioned the name of the two guards who had a clue about it, all he had to do was speak to them. The whole household was struck with fear after they confirmed what it was. Did you say it was dark purple? Red lightning was swimming around it? It was the explosion of that same item that destroyed the entire underground tunnelway and caused the burning sands on the surface to cave in. We almost lost our lives. Marshall's father recalled his conversation with the two. They remembered just how much destruction was caused after the explosion, especially when the underground battle facility was also trembling immensely from the impact. If that explosion had gone off in the city, at the very least, 3 streets would be obliterated. They now understood why Gustav said they would not be able to collect their son's remains, because there would be nothing to collect after that. We have to meet his demands. At this point, Marshall's father became decisive. The next day arrived, and only one more day was left for Gustav to get Boss Danzo out of the cell. Within the new place Gustav booked along with Carissa's, he stared at Marshall sitting stiffly in the living room beside Carissa's, who looked cheerful. Every time Marshall sneakily looked in Gustav's direction from the side of his eyes, he would freeze even more because Gustav was staring directly at him. Don't be so afraid, big brother Gus. Do not reveal my identity to a stranger. I still don't trust him, Gustav voiced out before Carissa's could complete her sentence. But he helped you with the video call. The Rel family dropped the charges on Sir Danzo because of him. I'm sure we can trust him, Carissa's said while holding onto Marshall's hand. Marshall forced a smile, but it was obvious that he was still scared stiff of Gustav. He didn't have a choice, Gustav responded while standing up. This was an abduction. With or without you here, I would still get him to do as I wanted, Gustav added while walking towards the kitchen. Does that mean you would have truly sent his body parts if his parents didn't cooperate? Carissa's asked before Gustav disappeared into the kitchen. Yes, Gustav's voice echoed from within. Eek, he's so scary, Marshall voiced out with a lone tone. Don't worry, he's actually nicer than he shows. He just likes to hide it, Carissa's said in a comforting manner. She also found Gustav scary, but remembering everything that had happened in the last month, she knew there was more to him than just someone who acts like they have no emotions. He had every reason to leave her behind or cast her out after she had misbehaved several times, but he still tolerated her and even saved her before going back for Boss Danzo. Even though Boss Danzo was caught because of her, he continued to cater for her, and just as he promised, he let her see Marshall before leaving the city. Even though there were other motives surrounding this, it was still a fact that he kept to his promise. The night before, when she was questioning Marshall about not appearing when she used the light signal, he explained that he wasn't allowed to leave home. Carices was finding it hard to come to terms with that answer because she felt betrayed even though she wasn't in control of her actions at the time. Gustav was the one who reassured her that Marshall was truly in love with her. He had noticed this from trying to get Marshall away from the school the day before. Gustav was very good at reading others, so he knew that with the way Marshall acted, Carices would not have to suffer anything if he was in control. Unfortunately, he was still young, so he currently had little to no control over his life or power in his family. Marshall had his romantic charms, and originally he and Carices would be engaging in some mushy activities right now, but with Gustav around, all thoughts of romance with Carices flew out the window. He remembered his face was planted to Gustav's boobs the day before, where he took Carices' form. He was actually getting excited from that, even though they were on the run at the moment. "Ah," Marshall exclaimed as he understood why Carices smelled so manly at the time. Everything now made sense to him, especially how Carices was able to move that fast in the first place. "What's wrong?" Carices asked with a look of worry as she held his face affectionately. He turned to stare at her with a painful expression while picturing what happened yesterday. "Could I be Ga?" Chapter 7:16. Gustav would occasionally shake his head in the kitchen while preparing breakfast. 16-year-olds falling in love? How is that even possible? Just because it didn't happen with you doesn't mean others get to share in your unfortunate romance situation. The system suddenly voiced in his head. "You little bit." Gustav nearly cursed out loud as he heard that. "You go silent for days, then suddenly come back to taunt me," Gustav said internally with a tone of annoyance. "You think I'm not busy in here? There's tons of work and preparation." The system responded with a tired sigh. Of course, it was impossible for the system to get tired since it was a scientific creature with sentience. It was just trying to mimic humans. "TCH, stay out of my business then," Gustav said once again. "Your business is my business, virgin, but mine is not necessarily yours," the system replied. "Humph, we shall see. I won't be a virgin for long," Gustav voiced out. "Now we both know that's a lie, but don't worry, I'll let you have this one," the system responded with a consoling tone. Gustav could not deny that seeing all this whole lovey situation with Carices and Marshall was triggering. He recalled his last night in the MBO camp 6 months back. Angie. The feeling of Angie's lips on his felt sophisticated, and he longed for that scenario to repeat itself. Even though Gustav acted all emotionless most times, it didn't mean he did not have emotions. And now he was more than eager to return to MBO camp after dealing with the situations around him first. After they had eaten breakfast, Gustav asked both of them to stay indoors while he left the apartment. Now that the charges on Boss Danzo had been dropped for abduction, the only ones left were the food poisoning and participating in illegal underground fights. These two were related to Vanisher, so Gustav knew now that he only had to deal with mostly one enemy. Ringlord Vanisher was the leader of the 3 Ringlords, so definitely, he was the one pulling the strings in the shadows. Gustav was about to put the 4th phase of his plans into action at the moment. As he traveled towards the precinct where Boss Danzo was held, his face and physique transformed into a different one. "Are you telling me a lawyer for Danzo suddenly popped up out of nowhere?" Within a dimly lit green room, one of the 3 people seated around a table voiced out. "Yes, Ringlord Carter. He's here to defend Danzo on the food poisoning claim as well as the underground battles. Who dares to try and defend him? Such guts. He goes by the name Peter Gill and has managed to issue a hearing for Danzo regarding both charges. He has gathered some claims and evidences regarding the charges. Interesting. So someone dares challenge us," the woman in the midst of these 2 men voiced out. "We will need to find out everything on this Peter Gill and end him before he tries anything," Ringlord Vanisher voiced out. "Sir, the hearing is happening in the next 2 hours. We were asked to inform you from the court to be in attendance. What? 2 hours? How is that even possible? They voiced out in disbelief. How can they allow the hearing to be held in 2 hours when this lawyer just arrived today? Prevent it from happening for the next 2 days, Ring Lord Vanisher stated. It's from the higher-ups. We cannot do anything about it. This lawyer seems to have powerful backing. Interesting. I did not see this coming. Ring Lord Vanisher was lost for words. He would originally have everything under his control, but the case seemed to be the opposite in this situation. Looks like we have no choice but to attend with our own lawyer then. Breaking news. The notorious Mr. Eldorado has been granted bail. The abduction charges has been taken off, and it is said to have been a misunderstanding on the part of the Rel family. Breaking news. The notorious Mr. Eldorado has been granted bail. It is a claim that everything so far had been a setup, and he was convicted wrongly in the first place. Mr. Vanisher in a pinch, as claims of his illegal activities has been put to light. Claims of manipulation has also been. By evening time, different media outlets covered the current situation about what was happening in the city with Boss Danzo and Vanisher. Gustav had pulled some strings and unsurprisingly managed to get a hearing for Boss Danzo, where he also managed to help him get bail. All the research so far had paid off today, and he had released so many claims backed up with statements from several sources about Ring Lord Vanisher's hidden illegal activities, which was linked to how Boss Danzo got pulled into the underground battle arena in the first place. This issue was one that a lot of people knew about, but no one could publicly try to expose Lord Vanisher unless they wanted to be snuffed out of existence. He was no ordinary foe after all. Exposing such secrets brought even him a lot of troubles, so he wouldn't take such a situation lightly. Unfortunately for Vanisher, this time, he was up against Gustav, who didn't care about all this. Yes, the lawyer was actually him in disguise. The claims Gustav had revealed during the hearing were backed by sources which Gustav explained had to be anonymous in the meantime since their lives would be at stake. It was hard to make do with this since the panel needed more evidence, but they were able to grant Boss Danzo bail due to this, and an investigation on Vanisher started getting carried out by the police force. Since Gustav would have to reveal at least one of the sources during the hearing, he made use of himself. He had recorded his talk with Boss Danzo, where Boss Danzo explained everything that was happening, so he made use of that, saying it was a call where Boss Danzo was asking for help. Chapter 717. She had recorded his talk with Boss Danzo where Boss Danzo explained everything that was happening, so he made use of that, saying it was a call where Boss Danzo was asking for help. Since the name Gustav mentioned while using the lawyer identity was his original identity, he would still have to appear before the law sooner or later. However, before that he had to be prepared for everything Vanisher might try to do during the bail period. Gustav knew they would try to do something to anyone who came out to be a witness, which was why he mentioned his original identity in the first place. If they tried to do anything sketchy, they wouldn't successfully. Acting like a lawyer was something Gustav practiced well for in these past few days. Gustav's intelligence had reached a state where he only had to see something once to remember it forever, and his reading speed was also very fast. Using all this to his advantage, he learnt quickly how he was going to deal with the case himself, presenting a fake lawyering identity. Calling in a favor from one of the MBO generals, they pushed some buttons to make sure the hearing was heard 2 hours after Gustav went to the station as Boss Danzo's lawyer. It was proven that the food poisoning happened to be a mistake and Boss Danzo wasn't informed about the young girl's allergy. The judges even asked for Vanisher's son to come say something as a witness, and surprisingly the young boy took Boss Danzo's side. He mentioned that Boss Danzo was never informed about that particular allergy because they themselves never knew the girl was allergic to that. The only charge that was left to proof now was the illegal underground battle, which wasn't done out of free will. This was why there was an investigation going on as of now. Back at the new apartment, Boss Danzo sat on the sofa while Gustav served some non-alcoholic wine to everyone. They were celebrating his return and Carices was very joyful seeing as he was back. She had no idea how Gustav did it, but she was glad he did. The guilt she felt since he was caught had been eating her up inside. Seeing her again, it was as if Boss Danzo could tell exactly what was going on and hugged her like a child. "It's okay. It's not your fault." Gustav already explained everything to me. These words were enough for her to let go of the guilt while sobbing uncontrollably. At least that was over and done with now, and Boss Danzo was questioning why they had a stranger in their midst. Oh, him. I abducted him, Gustav responded bluntly. Boss Danzo spat out the wine from his mouth as he heard that. What? He thought he didn't hear properly and asked again. I abducted him. Only fair since his parents were also planning to kill a child. This is only mild in comparison, Gustav voiced out with an unbothered tone and sipped some wine. Marshall was copped up on the sofa opposite Boss Danzo, still with a stiff look on his face. Carissa's was seating beside him. Boss Danzo now understood that this was the kid whose parents planned Carissa's death match with him. He couldn't help but admit that Gustav's words were making sense. If people who committed crimes and brought others' downfall without thinking were to have the same thing happen to them, maybe they would think twice before they did such again. Like in this case, if Carissa's had ended up getting killed by the Rel family, and someone else killed the child of the Rel family, they would understand how it felt like to lose a child, which might make them think twice before committing such evil acts next time. But even with this, Boss Danzo didn't completely accept Gustav's behavior and began to reprimand him. Well, you're back now, at least that's all that matters to me. I will return him to his parents when I get you both out of this city, Gustav voiced out after a brief argument with Boss Danzo. When will that be? Boss Danzo asked. The day after tomorrow, Gustav replied. Carissa's, say your goodbyes. You two probably won't see each other for a long time, Gustav added. But his parents agreed to leave me alone. Do I still need to leave the city? She asked with a crestfallen look. They can't be trusted to keep to their promises. There's no guarantee that after I and Boss Danzo have left this city, they will not re-engage on their word, Gustav said factually. You can come back again one day when you know you're powerful enough to protect yourself, or after Marshall has taken control of his family, Gustav added. Carissa sighed as she realized Gustav's words were making sense. People like the Rel family who saw the world as their playground might not stick to promises if they didn't feel the need to. There would be no point to endangering her life. Marshall touched her face and turned her head to face him. It's going to be okay. We will keep in touch, and in the future we will meet again, he muttered while rubbing her face affectionately. H&M? A wry smile appeared on Carissa's face as she nodded. I would say get a room, but you kids are too young for that, so. Hands where I can see them, kid, Gustav voiced out like a party pooper ruining the moment. You're just jealous 'cause you're still a virgin, Carissa's yelled while bringing out her tongue. Gustav. How did she know? Gustav froze like he just got pierced by 1,000,000 invisible arrows. So pitiful. You're now a laughing stock to the kids as well. The system chipped in and bursted into laughter. Boss Danzo was not left out. It was irregular to render Gustav speechless, so this moment was quite funny to him. Shut up, Gustav stared at Carissa's with a glare before turning to face Marshall. Chapter 7:18. Fear instantly gripped Marshall's heart, and his hand, which was placed on Carissa's cheek, slowly dropped down. Carissa's grabbed his hand and placed it back on her cheek before staring at Gustav back with a glare. It was still a funny sight to behold, and Boss Danzo was already laughing uncontrollably by the side. After some time, Boss Danzo asked to see Gustav privately, and they moved towards the balcony area to speak. You said the day after tomorrow. What about the next hearing, which is in 2 weeks? Boss Danzo asked. Don't worry, we'll take care of that. This city is not safe for either of you, but I can handle the situation if it's just me, Gustav responded. Wouldn't it be too troublesome? I don't want to give you too many problems. Boss Danzo was still worried because he still saw Gustav as a kid regardless. Going against these kinds of people is scary even for adults, not to even mention a 19-year-old. It will be fine. You'll only be adding more problems by being here because then I would have to worry about your safety and hers. I can take care of myself, Gustav stated with a tone of confidence. Haha, okay, my boy. Will you be joining us after you're done here? Boss Danzo asked. I still have to visit another city after I'm done here. I would probably spend a few days there, and then I think I can visit you both for 1 more week before going back to the MBO camp, Gustav stated. He still had to visit Brehuman City after this to get the second quarter of Sir Zill's research. After that, he would only have a little more time left before he had to return to the MBO camp. He probably wouldn't even have time to see Miss Amy before he went back, and he recalled she was working on an important case as well, which he was supposed to help her with. I'm sure Miss Amy can handle things herself. There was no one to help Boss Danzo here, Gustav thought. Oh, I still have to help Mr. Zill complete his research. Remembering this, Gustav decided he was going to visit Grayscale Pharmaceuticals. He proceeded to make a call to Sir Zill to ask if he was available. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit room, 3 of the ring leaders sat while staring at a holographic display and voice communicating with someone. We found the location. The masculine voice could be heard from the other end. Good. Commence the operation. I cannot have my reputation damaged. Kill him and leave no traces behind. Ring Lord Vanisher voiced out as he stared at the massive 200-plus silver-colored building in the footage. Understood. We will isolate this area immediately to prevent any interruption from outside forces, the voice on the other end stated. Planting the tracking device in Danzo was a good move. A feminine voice rang out in the room. He really managed to hide his tracks, but they had no idea about this, the other Ring Lord voiced out. It's good the kid came here on a trip instead of on a mission. He's not even in league with the other MBO officers in the city, which makes things even easier, Ring Lord Vanisher voiced out. I have eyes on them. The footage zoomed in on the second to the highest floor of the building, displaying 2 figures at the balcony area, Gustav and Boss Danzo. Attack. Boss Danzo, I'm heading out. They'll be back in a few hours, Gustav voiced out after getting off the call with Sir Zill. Sir Zill had mentioned that they could meet in the lab in a few minutes. He hadn't disturbed Gustav about the Arkham research in the past few days because he knew Gustav was busy with handling Boss Danzo's issues. It would be inappropriate and selfish on his part to still ask Gustav to come for more examination when he hadn't resolved Boss Danzo's issue. All right, be safe. They'll watch after the kids, Boss Danzo responded with a smile. Just as Gustav was about to jump off the balcony, since this was his usual means of getting out of the building, he suddenly sensed a wave of energy up ahead. This disrupted his senses as he could feel waves of energy coming from every direction. He paused and decided to activate God Eyes so he could look around, but just then, Fwai, a massive golden-colored beam, suddenly blasted towards them from the opposite direction. Gustav quickly pushed Boss Danzo out of the way. Boom. Crumble. 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 The apartment was instantly put in shambles as this part of the building began to crumble from the blast. Gustav was barely able to get Boss Danzo away in time due to the immense speed of the blast and having his senses confused. The floor cracked open, the walls crumbled, and everything began to fall. Thwai, another blast was sent towards the building at this point. Gustav wasted no time in activating combination and mixing both speed skills together. Dash plus sprint. Fush, grabbing hold of Boss Danzo, who was lying on the floor behind. He dashed further into the crumbling apartment and grabbed both Carissa's and Marshall before they could fall into the massive hole opening on the floor. Their mouths were wide open in confusion and fear as they hadn't completely registered what was going on, and Gustav was moving with immense speed, so their movements seemed like a standstill. Carrying all 3 of them, he jumped from falling pieces of wall to fallen pieces of the wall before leaping across the air. The instant they phased past what used to be the balcony area, the second beam blasted into the building again. Boom. The entire skyscraper started crumbling down while the shockwaves from the explosion slammed into Gustav and the others in midair, sending them flying further away. Gustav took most of the hit, allowing the others to be fairly grazed, but every one of them still passed out as their bodies fell across the air. Chapter 719. Gustav took most of the hit, allowing the others to be fairly grazed, but every one of them still passed out as their bodies fell across the air. They were thousands of feet above the ground, so even though they had been falling for several seconds, they were still far from touchdown. Gustav opened his eyes while they fell across the air, feeling a searing pain in his back. Regeneration has been activated. He ignored the notification as usual and looked around to see Boss Danzo and the others falling across the air as well. Behind them, the entire building was crashing down. Placing his hands on both sides, Gustav controlled his fall, moving north. Grab. He arrived in front of Boss Danzo's falling body and grabbed his collar. He proceeded to place Boss Danzo's unconscious body on his back. Marshall and Carissa's were all falling further towards the left, so he had to control the angle of his fall once again. Moving towards the side, he managed to grab their collars. At this point, they were only a few hundred feet away from making contact with the ground. Gustav straightened his body while holding on to everyone. Smoke had covered the entire vicinity from the explosions due to the multiple attacks, but Gustav could see clearly after activating God Eyes. Just when they were a few feet away from making contact with the ground, Hover has been activated. Their bodies paused in midair and floated above the ground before slowly descending. All of them had regained consciousness at this point and started coughing due to the smoke surrounding them everywhere. Gustav dropped them on the ground and looked up. He could see a weird barrier covering the vicinity. This barrier could not be seen with the naked eyes, but due to God Eyes, he could see it clearly. The situation isn't looking good. There doesn't seem to be a place for them to take cover, Gustav thought as he saw the building crumbling down. Screams could be heard from the building, which depicted that there were a lot of people within, affected by the current situation. Partial collapsal form activated. Gustav's body turned green as he bloated slightly. Bam! He slammed both palms on the ground, causing icicle-like rocks to shoot out from the ground. The rocks surrounded Boss Danzo and the others, forming a wall around them and eventually blocking even the top. He deactivated the collapsal form and activated size manipulation. Size manipulation has been activated. Gustav's body began to increase in size intensely. In a matter of moments, he had already become several hundred feet tall. Bang! 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 Taking steps forward was like a cannon going off as he arrived in front of the crumbling building and pushed his hand forward in specific areas. Even with his size, God Eyes was still activated, giving him a clear view of people within the building. Some unlucky people already got crushed by debris. Some parts of the building were still standing, but one side was completely destroyed, and people were falling to their deaths. With his massive palms, Gustav was able to grab hold of over 20 people and throw them far away from the dangerous scene. He was quick in rescue, grabbing hold of multiple people and flinging them away. Where he flung them to, there was a gravitational flux that decreased the descent speed of these people, making them land safely. It had only been a few seconds, and he had managed to save close to 100 people already. High up in the air, the gaze of some entities pierced through the cloud of smoke up ahead and scanned through. Got him! One of them voiced out. Attack! Thwurwoombom! Gustav's eyes widened as he looked upwards to see a golden starlight illuminate the entire place before a penetrative beam with immense power shot towards him. Size manipulation has been deactivated. Gustav's body decreased in size with speed, causing the beam to slam into the building once more. This time the building crumbled completely, falling apart with speed. Not everyone had been saved, but Gustav would not die trying to be a hero when he knew he couldn't do anything to stop the beam. The dust cleared up, and he could see 3 figures floating thousands of feet above the air. Boom! Boom! Without waiting for another second, the beams kept blasting across the place. Even when Gustav dodged, the shockwaves still sent him hurling across the air. Even the wall he created using the collapsal form was trembling immensely even when it didn't get hit. They're powerful. How did they find us? Gustav wondered as he managed to stabilize himself. For them to do this without a care about whether the MBO would arrive or any other authorities that would mean the barrier surrounding this environment is a cloak. The outside world will not notice anything happening here. In less than a second, Gustav had analyzed all this, which means I can't expect help from outside forces. I have to deal with them myself or destroy the barrier, Gustav thought. All these thoughts formulated in his mind with speed, since it had only been an instant since the previous attack. Combination has been activated. It might only be for a few seconds, but I could use that chance to destroy the cloaking barrier. Mutated bull plus blood wolf plus demonic bunny plus collapsal plus Saverina serpent. His skin turned purple with golden plaited scales as a massive silver-colored horn grew out of his forehead, and he turned extremely muscular, reaching a height of over 8 feet. Golden thorns grew out of his fist area, as his face also transformed to ashen white color. "He's not dead yet," one of the three, standing high above the air, shouted out. "I'm going to get him," the lady with azure-colored hair voiced out as she dashed downwards with speed. "What is that?" The one who had been shooting out the golden beam all this time voiced out as he could see Gustav's transforming downwards. Chapter 720. Just keep attacking. "I will get the Danzo and the girl." The one with a tin-shaped head and purple bodysuit flew down as he voiced out. The girl who swooped down could spot a menacing-looking creature with glowing white eyes, purplish and golden-colored scales covering some parts of his body, and muscular-looking 9-feet-tall physique where Gustav was initially located. How did his strength level increase so much compared to earlier? She was surprised as she felt the immense energy coming from him. Thwoo, the golden beam shot down again, radiating with immense starlight. Gustav's right arm bulged intensely as he arched it downwards with force, concentrating power into his hand. Throwing it up with force, waves spread across the vicinity as his fist traveled towards the beam of golden light shooting down. Boom! The grounds cracked open as his fist collided with the beam, and a force of energy also blasted upwards as well. Hush! Everyone who was hundreds of feet away got blasted backward by the force as the golden beam of light was catapulted back into the air with sheer force. The ground kept collapsing from the force, and a massive crater was created in a matter of moments. The three attackers had widened eyes as they saw the beam getting shot back. Boom! It exploded in the sky, sending the one who was swooping down, flying. None of them had expected this development from a falcon ranked. Gustav didn't waste any time and leaped upwards. Thwai! It was like the air was being ripped apart as he shot upwards with speed and suddenly appeared in front of the one who had started the attack. Thwai bang! A fist to the face sent this mixed blood hurling downwards with blood and teeth in his mouth. He's fast. That speed was like teleportation, he thought as his head rang from the collision while his body was blasting across the sky towards the east side of the barrier. Twi Gustav didn't give him time to recuperate and appeared right in front of him before punching out once more. Bam! His fist slammed into the enemy's gut, sending him hurling forward away while spitting out blood in midair. At this point, Gustav could feel so much power coursing through his veins that he felt like if he let loose, the entire vicinity might get destroyed. Remembering Boss Danzo and the others were also here, he tried to keep the force of his attack concentrated to one area. The enemy slammed head-on into the barrier and hadn't even gotten the time to think when Gustav's figure appeared in front of him again with both legs outstretched. Bang! The entire barrier made a loud collision sound as the enemy's body got pounded on its surface mercilessly. He felt like the force of an entire mountain just slammed into him as he was on the brink of passing out. Isn't he supposed to be a falcon rank mixed blood? Did we get the information wrong? These were the thoughts running through his head. Gustav felt a force approaching from behind as he was about to send a blow forth that would leave the enemy incapacitated. He swerved to the side across the air, and a massive outstretched hand passed by his side. Bang! The shockwaves from the extended fist still slammed into him, sending him hurling backward for a bit. The arm began to pull back towards the person who sent it back, but Gustav suddenly reached out and grabbed hold of it. Fly, spinning around, he swung the arm along with the owner towards the side of the barrier. Bang! A loud collision rang out as the tin-headed man slammed into the barrier. He was initially going to break open the wall barrier Gustav set around Boss Danzo and the rest, but he couldn't ignore seeing his comrade receiving a whooping. As he slammed face-on into the barrier, Gustav flew forward across the air towards him. He quickly rolled towards the side, dodging the kick Gustav sent out as he recalled his extended arm. Both of them charged at each other in midair, sending a fist forward at the same time. Boom! The collision sent forth a wave that spread across the vicinity as both of them got thrown backwards a bit. Thwai, Gustav sensed an energy spike behind before he could fly forward to attack again. Film, this time the golden beam shot forward with more penetrative and violent force. Gustav turned around and shot out a beam of silver-colored energy from the middle of the horns protruding out of his head. Boom! As both forces collided, intense shockwaves spread across the place, slamming heavily into the cloaking barrier. However, the barrier still seemed sturdy enough even though Gustav and the others were sent hurling backward once again with injuries appearing all over their body. Bang! An extended fist slammed into Gustav from above before he could stabilize himself, sending him hurling downwards towards the collapsed building area. Gustav's body spun severally across the air as the impact of the fist caused internal injuries. He suddenly paused in midair and flew upwards, dodging a transparent bluish beam sent forth from the side. The girl who had swooped down earlier but received the full brunt of the explosion of the golden beam had managed to recuperate and now joined the battle. Gustav had no idea what her ability was, but his gut told him to make sure he didn't make contact with the bluish beam she just emitted. Thump! Another golden beam shot down with intensity. Gustav swerved to the side and flew up after dodging the beam. Bang! It made contact with the ground and caused further destruction, sending shockwaves across the vicinity. Even the people Gustav had saved earlier received a lot of injuries from the shockwaves, and they couldn't leave due to the barrier. The wall of icicle-like rock Gustav erected around Boss Danzo, and the others were slowly starting to crumble due to the shockwaves coming from the ongoing battle. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.